How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, very sad situation coming our way out of southern Minneapolis at a church slash school called Annunciation. It's horrible what happened here. The assailant is this woman here, transgender. Her name is Robin Westman. She is responsible for shooting up our most vulnerable of targets, a place filled with children, a school, a church. The end result is 2 children that died, ages 8 and 10, and there were 17 others injured. Out of the 17, 14 were children, ages 6 to 15, and 3 were elderly parishioners. There's a lot we're going to cover today. I got my good friend, retired Lieutenant Joseph Pangaro. He is an expert at active shooters, active shootings, and we're going to talk a lot about what happened here, how can it be prevented. We're going to break down the manifesto, get into the mind of active shooters, and just hopefully provide you guys with a lot of clarity. We do a lot more on this channel than just reporting. We do our best to try to provide the facts, but in the meantime, I bring in experts that are able to help us get through what we need to get through, and this is a lot to get through. So bear with me because I took my notes from the conference that just was had today. Was that August 28th? So I believe there's a lot of good information here. I'm sure as the days progress, more information will be found. But at this time, we're going to work on what we have. And that includes also the 4-page manifesto that I was able to find through some of the searches on the internet, through the news outlets. But let me get Joe on. Hey, Joe, how you doing?
How you doing, Anthony?
Good. Hey, Joe, you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Joe Pangaro. As Anthony said, I retired a little bit ago. I spent 27 years in law enforcement, all in New Jersey. I spent most of that time in the investigative division. I worked my way up through the ranks. I was detective sergeant, detective lieutenant, and I ended as the co-commander of the patrol bureau. I was also the charge of internal affairs and all the administrative things that lieutenants end up doing. I was also in charge of homeland security things, so threat assessments. I was trained by them to do them for our schools and businesses and all the places in town that needed to have people trained and prepared to respond to violence like active shooters. I'm an author. I write for Blue 360 Media. I've written several books on interviewing and conducting criminal investigations. And I like to stay up on things as I teach and train officers across the country, as well as schools, businesses, religious facilities, and any place that people gather.
Yes. And guys, let me switch that one. Guys, as you can tell, I only bring on the people that have the true experience, that don't just report about what happened and give us what everyone else is telling us, but what our steps need to be to go ahead and try to prevent so this doesn't happen again. But I got to bring us back to the incident real quick. So on August 27, 2025, morning of attack, around 8:30 a.m., students and families gathered for school mass during the first week of classes at Annunciation Catholic Church. Church doors were locked once mass began, standard security protocol. Westman arrived with 3 weapons and approximately 120 rounds of ammunition. Finding the main entrance locked, Westman was forced to abandon the original plan of entering the church interior. Instead of gaining access inside where there would be a wide open field of fire, Westman was forced to shoot from the outside. By the way, this coward just shot randomly. Didn't even know where they were shooting, just shooting through glasses. Didn't know who they were hitting. Westman positioned outside the church and fired rifle through side windows, specifically trying to target children sitting in pews. The attack lasted several minutes, with Westman firing between 50 to 100 rounds. 120 shell casings recovered from what I got from the conference. During the attack, teachers were getting shot at while protecting the kids. One child received a shotgun blast to the back while covering and protecting a fellow student. Students followed lockdown training, laying on the floor and covering each other. 8th grader Javon Willis, 13, helped keep classmates calm under pews, then thanked officers afterwards. Now, in the immediate aftermath, Westman died by suicide from self-inflicted gunshot wounds in the church parking lot. Emergency medical services arrived within minutes, stationed only blocks away. First patient transported to hospital within 10 minutes of initial call. 2 children, sadly, ages 8 and 10, were killed. 17 others injured. So you had 14 children, aged 6 to 15, and 3 elderly parishioners. Parents rushed to scene in panic, with reunion process managed in school gymnasium, and community members like Patrick Scallon ran to help, assisting 3 injured children. Now, I want to give another update real quick that I got, which was there was a basically before the attack, they're saying, now this hasn't been confirmed at the conference, but I saw this, I believe, in a CNN article. They believe Robin Westman, 23, visited Annunciation Catholic Church under the pretext of wanting to reconnect with the Catholic faith. During this reconnaissance visit, Westman studied the church's interior layout and security procedures, created detailed hand-drawn diagrams of the church's interior, including entry and exit points, prepared wooden boards with smoke canisters attached designed to barricade emergency exits, recorded multiple YouTube videos featuring a manifesto, weapon displays, and attack plans. And I do have a 4-page copy of one of his manifestos. Videos were timed to be automatically published during the attack. He purchased 3 firearms legally, rifle, shotgun, and pistol, because in the conference, they don't have reason to believe that the guns were purchased illegally. Prepared ammunition and inscribed weapons with hateful messages, including "Kill Donald Trump," 6 million wasn't enough. And again, that's a Holocaust reference. It's anti-Semitic. So if that's true, because that comes from CNN, I believe. So you got the pre-attack, what happened in the aftermath. Joe, given the weeks of planning, reconnaissance visits, and online content creation, at what points could intervention have occurred, and what systems need to exist to identify these warning signs?
All right, so that's a great question, Anthony, because this comes up all the time when I do any kind of a threat assessment or I teach about violent people or intervening. And the reality is that in many of these cases, and I think in this one, these people don't just pop up on a Tuesday morning and say, you know what, I think I'll go down to the church and kill a bunch of children, or I think I'll go to my school and I'll kill some of my classmates, or let me go to work and kill some of my coworkers. These things are usually a buildup of activities. There's some kind of problem that the person has, either internally or externally with people in the location. They can have problems that are real or imagined, and these things start to build up in them, and they start to develop ideas about attacking because that will somehow assuage whatever it is that they're feeling. And we see this with many of these different shooters that attack people. We can also see that there are some people that are in criminal world. When we look at them, we look at organized criminals and disorganized criminals. So we see, let's take a serial killer who decides to go out there and just spur of the moment. They've been thinking about this. Maybe they've been peeping Tomming somebody, and now they're going to actually kidnap someone and violate them, and they kill them. They didn't put a lot of time into it. They didn't really think about it. They make most of their mistakes the first time. This would be a disorganized criminal. This person, this guy, when you look at all the things you just laid out there, he did surveillance. He went to the location. He has some history with the location. He did in-depth planning, drawings. This is an organized criminal, maybe not the smartest of criminals, but obviously organized. He had some kind of a plan, and then he went. So can we see that before it happens? So an article that I've written in the past for Campus Safety Magazine is called, "Can We See Violence Before It Erupts?" And the answer to that is yes. In many cases, we can, because of this buildup. And it's during the buildup that we can see when people start to say things, they draw things, they post things online, or in this case, they start writing a manifesto of some kind. Their grievances, they're documenting them. When it comes to shooters, we see this displayed in what we call leakage. Many of you have heard of that. Leakage is when they're in this buildup phase, And as they get more involved in what they're doing in the planning stages, when they say things, do things, the clothing that they wear may change. I believe one little boy that was in the church said this guy was all in black and he had a black ski mask. Very, very common for these people to dress up for the attack. But that's all leakage. So they start to say things, draw things, do things that people around them, if they know what to look for, if they understand what these things are, and they don't say, well, that was a weird thing to say, but they don't tell anybody. We certainly can see that and then intervene with these people before they attack. And so the answer to your question is yes. And in this case, I think there were probably opportunities for people in his family to see these things, to see what he was doing and what he was all about.
You were key on something. I was just going to ask you, but you totally hit the spot. When everything with hindsight bias, people tend to look at these things in a greater context and say, these are all the things that we missed, that we could have done something better. And the conference noted that he wasn't a person of interest. And I'm sure everybody will be like, well, how can he not be a person of interest when he was doing all these things and posting these videos and all this other stuff? But I realized something today. As much as we want to maybe, let's say, go after law enforcement, maybe have the systems to detect, I think the initial really are the people that are closest to them. Would you agree with that, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. The people that are in contact with a person like this every single day are the people that are going to notice, gee, that's a little strange. Why is my friend saying that? What is my son talking about? We know in Sandy Hook, that young man, he had black plastic bags taped to the windows of his bedroom. And apparently he had news articles about previous active shooters, much like this individual did. And his mother was aware of that. Now, do you think your kid's going to be an active shooter? Do you think your friend is going to go off and kill people? Most people don't. And it's just what you said. It's the hindsight afterwards. We look back and go, oh, that meant something. Why didn't I pick up on that? And that's where training and being aware of the subtleties, right? You can get very, very subtle reactions or things from people that we have to look at and be aware that when we hear something and it sounds out of place, investigate more, ask more questions. A lot of the states, and I think even in Minnesota, they have a red flag law. Now, we can argue about the red flag law. That's a separate conversation. But I believe they had it there where if somebody thought Anthony was up to no good, he was going to do something dangerous and he had guns, we could report that. And then the police could go with a court order, remove your weapons so that you can't strike. Well, that would be the ultimate intervention if people had been paying attention. So the problem with most of these events, like we go out and we investigate after a shooting event like this. And what we're going to find out in many of them is that some, if not a lot of people knew that something was up with the shooter. They were saying things, they were doing things that were out of place. All of a sudden, the leakage, they started wearing camouflage. They started wearing military kind of garb. They talk about weapons all the time. They talk about their grievances. And sometimes I guess Harry's just really annoyed at them or something. But these are all red flags that once we understand what we're looking at, we can certainly maybe connect the dots. So that's why I teach this to schools and churches and businesses, so that when the people are there and they hear things like that, they take it to the next level and start investigating. Try and figure out what's going on. Is it somebody just saying something stupid? Because we all say stupid things. Or is this the beginnings, the middle, or close to the end of an attack?
And Joe, I got to say something. You know what? Working in a prison, we get a lot of phone calls from inmate families, and they may totally believe the side of their loved one. And we kind of see things a bit differently, and we see what's happening in the real time. And sometimes we get ourselves, why don't they believe what we're saying? It's because they love them. And I think sometimes when the people that are closest to the individuals, they may feel something's wrong, but they may learn to, because of love, start to kind of justify what they're doing, maybe even give them excuses, because in the end, you said it, it's my son, that's my daughter. There's no way they're going to be an active shooter. What am I thinking? And then they start to rationalize, and then eventually they start to believe what really goes against what they're truly seeing. They get blinded because it can't be my son, and then some parents truly don't know, even though we may know from the outside. I mean, I want to be fair. I may be able to look at somebody objectively and that doesn't look right, but the parent that raised them, I think about, for that father or mother to say, hey, that child doesn't look right, because they're part of that accountability. So when an active shooter does something like this, I will guarantee you there'll be parents that will take on that as if they really did it, because that somewhere along the line, I missed it. How could I miss it? I was their mother. I was their father. And then they go into denial. There's no way it was him. There's no way it was him. You shot the wrong person, and they refuse to believe it because they're so connected to the responsibility of the choices that individual made. Like that, we'll get to the manifesto later, but when they go out and say, I'm going to do these things, I'm going to go ahead and kill these individuals, as a parent, when you finally wake up and realize that your son really did that, that's a big responsibility that you're going to wind up taking on, because you brought this person into the world and you're going to take on all the blame. Because at the end of the day, that's your son, that's your daughter. I thought that was a great part great thing you discussed, Joe. Okay, Joe, sorry.
And I just want to jump in there, is that we see this, Anthony, on varying scales. All right. So the same thing that's at work here, the psychological part of this, and that's all part of what investigating is for investigators, is that we look at not just how something happened, but why it happened, what led to it. I had a friend of mine call me yesterday. Their 12 or 13-year-old son, she found something in his bedroom. And it turns out it was a THC vaping pipe, and she wasn't aware of what it was. And I told her, I said, that's what it is. And, the kid's vaping now. She goes, I had a feeling he was doing that. I think I should call the police so that he doesn't get involved in more, but I don't want him to get in trouble. And I think a lot of people can't imagine that their son or daughter would show up at a church and fire weapons at children through the church windows until after it happens. And then they look back, and then all those things become amplified. And they said, how could I not see it? We saw the family in Michigan that got charged criminally for their son who did an active shooter event, first one in the country, because apparently this kid had told them he was going to do things, or they saw writings and they didn't act. So that is another aspect of this that we're going to start seeing more and more. If you had better say something to somebody. It's the mechanisms we have in place that are problematic for people to report sometimes.
Yeah, and Joe, I saw a question real quick before I get to the next one. I saw a question about the church doors being locked. Guys, again, we try to answer everything. Thank God the church doors were locked, because the assailant wasn't able, and going forward, we'll try not to mention her name in respect to what the conference said. Let's not make her famous. But with that said, it was a good thing that the church doors were locked, because basically this messed up the plan. The person couldn't go in and wind up having to adjust, and then basically doing what they did from the outside looking in. But someone mentioned, isn't shutting the doors a fire safety concern? And I thought that was a random question. But would that be considered a fire safety concern? Just out of curiosity, would you be able now, because of that practice, could you now tell other churches it's okay to lock those doors, and this could be part of the preventive measure, or is there a problem? Is there a conflict there?
No, there's absolutely no conflict there. What we look for is that you have free egress from a place, because that's what we're concerned. If you were locked in on the inside and there was a fire and no way to get out, of course, everyone would perish. But we see all of our schools and everything, we lock those doors, but most of them have the push bars so that you can leave. You can get out of the building in an emergency. And when I do threat assessments for churches, one of the things I tell them is they should have individuals that are trained, that as everybody comes in, they're making observations of who the people are, what they're doing. They're looking for suspicious behaviors. But once people come in and everyone is settled, now you close the doors from the outside. So a person who decides to attack the service when everyone's paying attention to the priest or the rabbi or whatever, and you just walk in the back door and start, firing rounds, you're going to lose a lot of people. So if we close those doors and they're locked, Now we have staff members outside the door that might have radios to talk to each other, and somebody shows up and says, I'm late for the service, and you can look at them, you make an evaluation that they're not a danger, you can open the door and let them go in. In an emergency inside, if people have to get out, they just hit those push bars and the doors open up. So that's not a problem, and that's actually securing access to victims is really one of the essential elements of keeping these people out. This guy fired up to 120 shots, it looks like, and horribly, 2 children lost their lives. But had he gotten inside, with the motivation that he had, and he had demonstrated he was willing to do it, fire in there 120 times, there could have been 120 or more victims that would be not with us today had he gotten inside.
And we'll go over later, but he wanted to target those children. You know, I lived in Patterson for a while. There was a school they made a movie out of called East Side High School. The movie's Lean on Me, famous movie. Joe Clark, played by Morgan Freeman, and Joe Clark was notorious for chaining the doors from the inside, and that was the fire hazard because he didn't want the kids to leave the school. So if people are thinking it's the same thing, it's not. It's exactly what Joe said. He stopped them from going out. So I think that was phenomenal information there, Joe. The fact that as long as they could still egress, and that makes a lot of sense. That's why those schools do have the push bars, but then they lock the other way. And Joe, one more question for this part is the fact that lockdown training surprisingly paid off and children covered each other raises questions about normalizing violence preparations versus genuine safety needs. How do we protect children without traumatizing them with the reality they need protection from mass violence?
Okay, Anthony, you talk about being on the cutting edge. That is what we're seeing for the longest time in this safety and security industry. There's been conversations about, do we traumatize children by doing these lockdown drills? And the thought is some parents, they say, my child can't handle thinking about a killer coming into the school. And that is traumatic, to think about a killer coming in and shooting these children. So I've always taught that it's age appropriate. That's what you teach children, how to respond. But I had kids in school, in middle school and high school, throughout this whole period that these shootings been going on. And I talked to my kids and I said, is it scary? They had some real lockdowns during their time in school. And they said it was scary, but we knew what to do. Right. And when I talk to kids and I go in and I often, when I do an assessment, I do talk to age appropriate kids. What do they know about safety and security? What do they know about lockdowns? For many kids, there is an underlying belief that, well, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it's going to happen. They grew up with this. These kids understand that they're locking down because somebody came in. They watch the news. They hear about all of these events. But what we're seeing, the trend now, state by state, I'm starting to see is that states are starting to change the rules for lockdown drills, where you can no longer do impromptu lockdown drills. So what they're saying is because it's too scary for everyone. What I always believed was that the killer is not going to call you and say, can I shoot you up at Tuesday at 3:00? They're going to show up and everyone has to be prepared to respond. So you train everybody by teaching them what the danger is. And then you teach them how to save themselves, how to protect themselves, how to run, hide, fight, how to lock down. And you do those announced. Next Wednesday at 2:00, we're doing a lockdown. And then the month after that, you just put the building into lockdown. And everyone goes to do what they're going to do. Is it stressful? It is stressful. Is it very stressful for some kids? I guess it is more than others. But the reality is you don't want the first time you have to do something be the first time you thought about it. That's why we do drills. So if kids, and I've seen this because we video record our drills. When everybody knows that it's a planned lockdown, they know it's a drill, people do not respond the same way. They do not move as quick. They do not move as thoroughly. They joke around. They don't lock down properly. And the reality is, if something ever happened, they would not be prepared to respond. But state by state, we're starting to see legislatures come out and say, it's too scary. You have to tell everybody that it's a lockdown drill. And in the industry, I can tell you, there's a lot of back and forth. Some people will say, absolutely, you never do an unprepared lockdown. And then other people say, you should do some unprepared so that people are ready to go. And that's going to continue to work its way through the system.
Yeah, so these are my two girls, and the reason why I'm bringing them up. Okay, so let me just show you two pictures of these girls, because the reason why I'm bringing this up are both my girls go to Catholic schools. Um, they go to a school by me that is, I'm trying to get the picture here. There it goes. So this is my oldest. She's 12, so she'll be in seventh. Maybe do it this way. She'll be in seventh grade. So she's 12. She'll be 13. And then you got my youngest, who is 8, will be 9. There she is right there, Catholic school. And I want to mention something just in partnership with Joe. You know, back in the day, we all used to share one monitor, one TV, and we all knew what everyone was watching. But today we don't. Everybody has their own iPads, iPhones, and, you know, different monitors, and everybody's maybe in the same room, but they're all watching different things. And I think that we may underestimate what they know and what they don't know. I have seen games that are pretty much related to scenarios like this that they're playing. And even though I try to take it away from them, there's another game there that they're going to play. And for my daughter, Mia, she's always nervous. I think she would find more comfort in knowing that the school is doing something. Maybe in the moment, it would be a little crazy. But then when the moment's done, she'll build confidence because it's no longer an unknown scenario. So if it happens again, she gets more accustomed, but she's also knowing if she has worry in the back of her mind, because you don't, this type of world exists, sadly, but it's true. And you don't want to hide the kids from not knowing, like, these types of things happen. I disagree with that. I think you have to introduce them within a context that you feel safe with. You don't want to introduce to them by other people who don't really care how it resonates with your child. So the more you try to protect them, the more you harm them, because they're going to be exposed. You can't see them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I think for me, once my daughter goes through, it'll be an exciting moment, both of them, but they'll feel confident, one in themselves, which is very important. And then the other thing is confident that they're being protected, because I think a lot of them know. They may not want to say they know, but they do know. And if you ask them the question, they'll shock you at what they know. And you'll be like, wow, this whole time. Another quick thing, if I may. My father, God rest his soul, died in 2016. This is a picture of him with my oldest daughter. My youngest daughter never really got a chance to meet him. My wife was pregnant at the time, but my father died before my wife gave birth. My father died in August, and my wife gave birth to my youngest in January. So when my father was dying, he had a couple of days to live, and the question was for my oldest, are we going to allow her to see my father because my father was dying? Is this something for a 4-year-old to see? But here's what we did. We didn't make the decision for her because she was close to that man and she wanted to see him. And had we done something to protect her, because she understood, my 4-year-old understood that at that time, what was happening. And if we would have said, you know what, we'll shield her from that because she doesn't need to see this, we would have denied her a moment that she would have wanted, that she wouldn't know how to have expressed, because she was close to my father. So I think we underestimate what we feel, one, our children know and what our children can handle. And if we try to protect them in that manner, the problem is you only make them weaker. And that's just my thought. It's not to be controversial, but I think I'm on point with that. Would you agree with that, Joe? Or
I agree with that 100%. And like I said, when I talk to my kids in middle school and high school, and their thought was they know all about active shooters. They know why they're doing lockdown drills. When I talk to kids, and I've done these assessments across the country, and like I said, I try and talk to age-appropriate kids. I'll go in and say, hey, what do they do here in your school for active shooter stuff? And I get answers from some of these kids that say, man, they really take it serious. We do all kinds of drills. We know where to go. We're confident what to do out on the football field if it happens when we're out there. And then I've had other places where these kids tell me it's a joke. They don't take it serious. The teachers are like, oh, this is annoying again. Let's lock down. They don't do what the right things go on. And this is where we have these problems. So is it traumatic for some kids? I think it is. But you're right, Anthony. These kids know what goes on. When I say age appropriate, I go into places with pre-K through 12 years old, 12th grade. I would never tell pre-K or kindergartners that the man's going to come and shoot you in the face and kill you. But there are things you can talk about. Like one of the things I do use is I have a PowerPoint, And I show it to them. I say, hey, who's heard of the big bad wolf? And they know who's coming in, the big bad wolf. And what do we have? What's he do? He huffs and puffs. So what can we do? We block the door. We hide. We do those things. You can teach the kids that that's happening. The moms and dads and the guardians at home need to be advised by the school that, listen, we're going to do announced and unannounced drills. Prepare your children to respond the way they've been trained. Mostly it's just going to be a drill that they're not going to tell you about. They want to see if you can do the right thing. So be prepared. Do what you're supposed to do. Don't panic. Don't try and get on the phone and call me. Go do what they're telling you to do. If you do that, it's my belief, if you do that, the kids will do it. I've seen thousands of these kids do lockdown drills, and very, very few of them I've seen become traumatized, though I know it does happen. There are some kids that will be traumatized by the lockdown, and they're crying, and I've seen teachers crying and sniveling and being scared to death, and I see it. But it's a very small number of people, and I think what we're looking for here is that it is empowering to these people who are in these buildings, schools, churches, businesses, to be able to respond and be able to save themselves. They have to be able to get up and move and lock down or flee or fight back. And we don't want the first time we have to do any of that be the first time we thought about it or the first time you're trying to get out of there and save your life. So practicing realistically is what I've always thought was appropriate. I follow the rules of every state I go to. They don't want to do unannounced. I don't do it. The other thing, I ask for an impromptu drill because it's a leadership test for the leadership of the building, the facility, whatever it is. And I've gone and said, hey, could you do a lockdown in 10 minutes? And I've had business leaders, school leaders, everybody, 10 minutes. We only do them on Thursday at 3 o'clock. We could never do it. Everyone would go crazy. Okay. And then I've had other people say, well, we normally do them on Thursdays at 3 o'clock, but I want to see how my people are going to respond. I want to see where the mistakes are so that when a guy really shows up with a rifle shooting the place up, I have already prepared for it. We know what could go wrong and we fix it in advance. That's the reality of this. Why do we do fire drills? So when the building's on fire, everybody reacts the way they're supposed to. Same thing with lockdowns. And I think we need to really have a deeper conversation about this.
I agree. Hey, Joe, I just want everybody to know that's a background of Joe's. That's not how he keeps his house. Just want everybody to know.
Yeah, well, what you got to understand is my studio, which is over there, we're moving the stuff all the way around. And this is like my whole work area here. And when that computer went down a little while ago, I had to come on here and you got my supplies, my guitar stuff, my living room, my note boards, all this stuff.
I actually love it because it reminds me a little bit of myself at work a little bit. So, hey, I want to go over the background a little bit of this, of her. Now, granted, I'm going to have to say the name again, so bear with me because it's relevant to the background. So I want to do a little personal history that I got, some criminal and mental health background a little bit, and their profile. So this is what I got. So bear with me again, but there she is. So born Robert M. Westman on June 17, 2002, and then made a name change to Robin in January, it says of 2020. I believe that's it. Yeah, at age 17 with mother support. So she was supported by the mother. Current age was 23 years old at the time of attack. Residents, they said there's 3 residents. They're trying to figure out which one is the main residence. They said they'll know that shortly, but something came up with Richfield, Minnesota. But I'm not going to go too deep in that because they really haven't confirmed anything with the residents. Employment, they did say that she worked at a local cannabis dispensary for several months in 2025 and then started a new job 2 weeks before attack. The family connection was the mother worked at the Annunciation Church and school as administrative assistant, I believe, and that was from 2016 to 2021. Guys, if I'm wrong with any of this, let me know. Update everything you can in the comments. So then if I go on again, I can retract and then put what's in there. But this is the information that's coming up. Educational history, they do have her as a former student of Annunciation Catholic School, graduated in 2017. And then the religious affiliation they have could be, they have former parishioner at Annunciation Catholic Church. Now, Criminal history, as of now, they didn't see any from the update. No prior criminal record except one traffic ticket. Mental health, no known history of mental illness, never confined for mental illness treatment. Legal status, no arrest or issues that would have prevented legal firearm purchases. That's a big thing. And according to neighbors, she did keep to herself, limited social interactions observed. I want to ask you a question about that real quick. Let me do this last, but I want to ask you a question about that because actually, you know what? Before we get to the man, because I have a couple of discussion questions, but I just thought of something that came to my mind. So a lot of the active shooters, and we're going to get to it because I got some stuff that kind of maybe could be some warning signs, so you can understand the mindset of an active shooter. But I'm wondering, a lot of these active shooters tend to be isolated. I mean, can we really force interaction with them? I mean, would that be like, okay, well, this person's isolated. Well, what do we do? Do we force interactions with them? Do we let them be? I mean, is isolated always a sign of an active shooter?
No, it's not always a sign, but it is one of the signs. Now, one of the things you're talking about here, and it's very difficult. The reality is we're looking at an individual that went to a church and killed innocent children and shot and attempted to kill many, many other people. And we have to dance around the psychological issue because there's some things that are involved here that is politically incorrect for us to talk about. And I think we do this at our own peril. We have to have a conversation to understand, there was no psychological problems in this person's life other than he was a man who thought he was a woman and wanted to transition into that.
So you're talking about gender identity dysphoria?
Gender identity. Now, when we look at that, it doesn't mean that people who identify as the opposite sex are violent. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, though, is that we have seen several of our shooters that have come to prominence in the country recently are individuals who wanted to transition to the opposite sex. In Nashville, that was a young lady that wanted to transition into a man. We've seen other people who have belief systems about who they are. The incel community, we've seen them do active shoot 'em, active stabbings, driving over people. People that have psychological situations going on where they can feel that they are victimized, because that's one of the things that we see as part of the profile. Not that there's a profile per se, the way we're thinking of it, the traits of an individual who commits a shooting like this is that one of them is that they feel victimized, or they feel that people are against them, or they feel that they're not understood and people are trying to hurt them. I think when we get into the manifesto, there's a lot there to look at where this person makes a lot of commentary about things that were going on and how they uncomfortable and why did they attack the church and the children? Why did the Nashville shooter attack the church and the children? Could there be a connection there between how they were feeling about themselves as they tried to figure out who they are in the world and the messages they were getting from these places that made them feel very, very uncomfortable, and they finally strike back out? I think we have to go beyond feeling like, well, you're not being kind to someone if you talk about if we don't talk about these things, we're not going to know how we can intervene maybe to prevent violence. And I'm not just saying that transgender people are the only ones who do this. We know that that's not true, but we've seen this several times. And as investigators, we have to look at all the facts for what the facts are, and we glean from it. If it had nothing to do with it, the investigation would show us that, and we'd say that is not relevant in this particular instance. But if there is relevance to it, then we need to identify what was relevant and see how can we look in the future. So how do you intervene with somebody like that? I'm hearing on the mainstream media, you see a lot of people are screaming, hollering, well, if you say it's because of this trait a person had, then you're going to have law enforcement just attacking people in that community. That's not how it's done. We have to look at the facts of every situation. When we look at serial killers, and I use them a lot because that's a psychological situation that they're doing, right? And they're repeating it over and over. We learn from them how they chose targets, how they how they interacted with their victim. What did they do? What attracted them to the victims? We learn every single one of them little details so that we know more and more about what could be going on in the mind of somebody who does this. When it comes to these active shooters, I study every one of these incidents so that I can learn from it, because each one has its own lessons learned. So if you look at it individually for facts, not worrying about, well, that'll upset everybody if we talk about that, and well, we shouldn't bring that up, that's going to lead to more dead people down the road, right? We can't be afraid to look at facts. And like I said, if it has nothing to do with it, then it has nothing to do with it. But if there is involved something there that we can learn going down the road in the future, that we see someone who might say something, draw something, post something, and we look at the aspects of this person's life and we go, wow, this person was a golfer. The last 4 people that shot up schools were golfers, and they had a problem with the 8th hole. We better look at that. Is this person having that problem? Now I'm saying that's facetious, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah. It's a trait. It's something to look at. It's either involved or it's not. But as investigators, we have to be willing to look at the truth. I look at one of the biggest places we also see that is in sexual assault investigations. When I became a detective and I'm investigating sexual assaults, I always believe the victim. I started out always believing the victim. And then sometimes in the course of my investigation, I confoundedly found out that the victim lied. And that is, society tells you they do not lie. And if you even bring that up, you have a problem. But the reality, anyone who investigates these things know sometimes people lie about it because there's power in that accusation. I always start with, it's real. And if my case leads me down the road that it's not real, that's a truth that has to be examined and part of the investigation. And that's all I'm saying here with all of this. We have to look at all of the facts and this person's psychological makeup. We need to learn from it so that the next time somebody is having a problem, maybe we can intervene. You save their victims and you save the person. This guy killed himself. His parents would rather have him around if they could have gotten him help. You see, so it's not about picking on someone or not being kind or hating people. It's none of that. I don't hate anybody. I love everybody. But I think we need to look at truth. We need to understand as best as we can what happened here and why, so we can apply those lessons combined with all the others going forward. When somebody says, you know, a person I work with said this, so we can investigate. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And you know what? Sometimes we spend most of our time more worried about how someone's going to resonate with what we say as opposed to just saying it. You know, I think we're at that point now where we have the assumption that we can't say things, and then now things aren't fully being addressed because not everything's being heard. It's only what looks politically correct. I agree with that 100%. You know, you have a concern like this, and, you know, let's address all matters. Let's address the things that could stand out. And then let's see, yes, in isolation, but obviously through our experience, we contextualize. We find out what works, what doesn't work. And if that is a piece of the puzzle, then we talk about it and we don't worry about being judged. Just put it out on the table. And it's funny now because you know how part of profiling would be, you know, back in the day, we'd probably say, hey, 95% of active shooters are lonely white males and all this other stuff. But how would you classify a transgender person? I mean, do they get their own category, or is it what they're transitioning into? Like Joe said, you have the woman transition into a male. Will that count as a male as a profile, a white male, or does it go by the fact that that's still a female? You know, we have to get these things out there, because in the end, if that is something that's growing and that is a concern, could that change the whole dynamic of how we profile active shooters? Now, okay.
Let me just throw this in here as a final note to what you're saying. What I look at for this particular situation, and I've said it, I don't think that a person who is a transgender is a shooter or a violent because they're transitioning, because they believe they're the opposite sex. That's not what makes people violent. It's their life experience that is making them react. Now, maybe that has something to do with the way they were treated, and therefore they built up this anger against society, not because of what they felt they were, but because of how they were treated by the outside world. Same thing is if somebody is picked on because of their race or their socioeconomic world. If you're picked on because of that, it has nothing to do with the fact that you're poor, but it was your life experience that led you to do certain things. And that's the aspect that I'm looking at it for. I'm not saying somebody's transgender, they're dangerous, or they're going to kill people.
No,
I'm simply saying we have to look at all the facts and see what life experience did that person have that led them to go to a church and shoot children.
Yeah, and guys, I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes when you're going through those major transitions, and you're concerned about judgment, sometimes your own insecurity could be projected, and you may think, oh, I'm being treated unfairly, when you're not, but your insecurities are being projected to the outside, automatically assuming that they are judging you when you're not. And that comes across in anything, not just what we're talking about here. Just, it could be any transition in life that you yourself could be uncomfortable with until you find your solid footing. And that doesn't always mean transitioning from male to, it could be anything. And while you're uncomfortable, your uncomfortability will be, okay, I'm going to project that now my insecurity, I think everybody's judging me because I am uncomfortable. When to be honest with you, no one's even looking at you.
Right.
They don't care. They moved on. Sometimes we put ourselves in our own spotlight thinking that, hey, everybody's looking at me when nobody really isn't. We're going to go over the manifesto in a little bit, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the ideology of what I've discovered for the assailant here. So authorities recovered hundreds of pages of evidence in which the shooter described hate for everyone except for mass shooters, very fond of mass shooters. They posted videos on YouTube channels under Robin W., including 10-plus minute manifesto video, which I believe now have been pulled because they don't want that stuff on the internet, obviously. Targeting multiple groups. So they did say police describe evidence of a whole lot of hate against multiple groups. So blacks, Jews, she pretty much said a lot of different groups. Video showed reverence for other mass shooters we talked about. Weapons, political stuff, weapons inscribed with "Kill Donald Trump" alongside anti-Semitic messages. How 6 million wasn't enough, we talked about. She wanted, the big thing here, she wanted to see children suffer. I mean, she was really big on targeting children for some reason. I'm thinking because children are the most vulnerable. Again, because you got the vulnerable, you got the school, you got the church. I mean, I think she just went for what the most vulnerable was. Now, Joe, how do personal identity struggles intersect with ideological radicalization? And should identity-based life changes, we kind of touched on this, be considered risk factors or simply normal human development?
Okay. And I think there's a lot there to unpack. And I think it goes down back to exactly what I'm looking at is it's your life experience. Whatever that life experience is. When I look at this person and you see that they attacked the church, you see how many groups that he talked about he hated and he was angry with and had problems with, except for active shooters, as you pointed out. Now, I think if we look at it as an investigator, I try to bring each factor down to its essence and then examine it. And what does the essence of it tell me? Where does that lead me? So if this person had a problem with all of these other groups, except active shooters, what is the commonality? What's the theme between active shooters? Whatever their grievance was, they acted on it by shooting and killing innocent people. Therefore, they were assuaging their anger, their hate, their fear. Everything is assuaged through the shooting of innocent people. Therefore, and it's a theory, this is where you'd have to have a theory where, where do you want to start from? And then your facts guide you into the truth, right? But you got to start out with an investigative hypothesis. If this person had all of these problems with these groups and saw active shooting as a way to assuage whatever's bothering them, they would see that in other shooters and say, see, they did it and they did the right thing. And I'm doing it and I'm doing the right thing. So you find a commonality there in the essence of what happens. Killing innocent, unrelated people who did nothing to them. And you can see that this person had an affinity to that. The Sandy Hook shooter. This kid had all these articles and stories about other shooters who reacted out the way they did. I mentioned the incel community. Right? So the incels have a particular belief system about how men and women interact and who interacts with who. but they have had active shooters, active stabbers. They drive over people with cars to assuage this anger that they have. And when there was one very, very famous guy who was on the internet, and he was considered a hero in that community, that he was so frustrated that when he attacked his targets, the same targets that these other people believed were a problem to them, they became a hero. Now, if we look at that and we say, here's a shooter who was enamored with other shooters and did what other shooters did, including killing themselves, there's a commonality to that behavior in that that's an outlet. And what does that outlet mean? Well, we look to their writings. We look to what they say. We look to what they posted. We look to their beliefs, all their beliefs. And we try and understand, is there a thread that goes from the essence that we've identified into each thread of their life that we can pull together? And that's why these investigations are not done overnight. The chief can't stand there this afternoon and tell us everything about this person, because it takes a long time to unravel somebody's life. And that's part of the investigation, but that is where we learn.
Joe, it's spot on, because back in the day with video games, they said video games made us violent, and they figured that the video games is what influenced us to do crazy things. So you had someone do something crazy. What games were they playing? But the funny thing is, one question I was never really asked is, it's not about how much the game could influence them. It's more about, why are they attracted to those type of games to begin with? Why don't we start looking at it from the other perspective? Because I could play a game and know that's a game and this is the real world, and I'm not going to go robbing cars. But there could be some people that could play that game because that's a reality they want to reach one day. So I think the question is, it's not so much the game influence or whatever it is, but rather, why are they attracted to that? Because again, if I'm looking up, you're looking up active shooters because you want to prevent, you want to stop it, whatever it is. That's your motive, and that's why you're invested in them. But then you have someone else, so that's your attraction to them. That's fair enough. Let's make, because it's a strong pull. But these are the reasons why. But someone else could be attracted because I want to be them. So it's really not so much how they influence you, but rather, what is your motive to seek out those things?
Anthony, now you're hitting on the Joe Pangaro method of investigation, and that is how I look at whether they are burglars, whether they are murderers, they are rapists, they are active shooters. My way of investigating these people was to understand who they are, why they could have done what they did, so that I can understand the case in front of me and make a good case. Look for the right clues, look for the right words, look for the right evidence. But going down the road, because there's going to be more, what did I learn from each one of those? So understanding the physical actions that someone took, the psychological actions, what influenced them, what were the things that drew them. You're absolutely right. I am drawn to this because it's part of what I do. As an investigator, I was drawn to all these different kinds of people. I wanted to know why they did what they did so I could figure it out and go to the next one and come to a conclusion, find the truth, right? Well, sometimes people are attracted to the activity because they're attracted to the activity. So I heard a famous speaker who speaks on violence say one time, not every person that plays violent video games will be an active shooter, but at some point, every active shooter played violent video games, or something to that effect, right? Just because you do it doesn't mean you're going to be a killer. But what they find is that these killers were doing these games. So your point is 100% on, why were they attracted to that? What did it give them? Everything we do gives us something, or we reject it because it bothers us, right? What draws them to doing this? This person obviously wrote it, attracted to killing children. There was something there that gave them that motivation. We need to understand that.
Yeah, because I'll be like, even it's like, oh, you're sick because you're looking up these things. No, I'm sick to try to understand it so I can figure it out. It's don't put a motive in, and you're totally wrong. You need people sometimes to safely go into that dark, because if you don't understand it, you're not going to solve it. So I got some more updates real quick, and then we're going to squeeze into the exhaustive reasons why someone may be an active shooter. And guys, we've also covered this before with the Colt Gray. So I did post that on my board. You should check it out. We covered a lot there because he was a younger active shooter. But again, some updates with the evidence. So there were search warrants for one at a church, 3 at the residences. So there's 3 residences. That's what I mentioned before. Literally hundreds of pieces of evidence recovered and being processed. I got four pages of one now. That I'll show later. FBI helping analyze extensive written materials beyond the manifesto because it could be a hate crime, or they're thinking it's a hate crime. And hell, it's a hate crime against children. Why not? Admitted openly that he wants children to suffer. If you don't want to put it to religion or anything else, or race or put it towards children. That's a protected category. It should be one. Electronic evidence, working to obtain electronic search warrants for shooters' devices. And then searches did not reveal additional firearms beyond the 3. Now, the weapons analysis, we had 3 weapons total: rifle, shotgun, pistol, all purchased legally. Ammunition, I don't know if I said 150, but Joe was right, 120. So 120 shell cases recovered at scene. Were there any modifications inscribed with hateful messages targeting multiple groups? Ballistics, wide range of injuries from grazing wounds to life-threatening trauma. And then the attack planning evidence so far was that they believe, again, there was a church visit weeks prior under false pretenses. Now, again, that didn't come from the conference. That came from something I believe I read with CNN, and they're sticking to it. Hand-drawn detailed diagrams of church layout. And remember, guys, sometimes they may not want to confirm it because for them it's an active investigation. So there may be certain things they may not want to confirm because it could mess their case up. Tactical preparation, so wooden boards with smoke canisters prepared for emergency exits. We had the media strategy, YouTube videos timed for publication during attack. And then you got the original versus executed plan: intended interior attack with barricaded exits versus forced exterior shooting, because remember the doors were locked, couldn't get in. And then the focus. So there's still no specific motive identified for targeting this particular church, even though we kind of assume the particular church we may not know, but we do know he was targeting children. Right now they're examining digital footprints, communications, online activity. They're reconstructing the timeline, mapping, planning phases and decision points, and the threat assessment, studying the classic pathways to an active shooter that investigators recognize, which me and Joe kind of touched on, mostly Joe. And then for the FBI, they're investigating as a hate crime and domestic terrorism. For the local side, local, state, and federal law enforcement, they're going to try to coordinate on this because at this point, the local or state have not agreed that it's a hate crime. And then the FBI assisting with manifesto and written material examination. So, Joe, I want to go to the legal gun purchase paradox real quick. Despite extensive planning for mass violence, Westman, the assailant, could legally purchase weapons. What reforms could close this gap between legal eligibility and demonstrated intent to commit mass violence?
Okay, you're going into an area that is controversial because it involves several things. One of our constitutional rights, the right to keep and bear arms, which is there's a feeling of people who are Second Amendment people that if you give any ground up on this whatsoever, it's a slippery slope. And we know that there's lots of people that want to take away people's Second Amendment, limit your Second Amendment, that kind of thing. So that's another one of these topics that having this conversation is tough. I said earlier that there's these red flag laws that a lot of states have, that if someone makes a complaint about somebody, they're saying something dangerous, suspicious, there's some kind of a problem, and they have weapons, we can get a court order and take their weapons away. That on its face sounds like it makes a lot of sense. You got somebody talking about shooting up a school and you find out that they have weapons, you take the weapons away. That makes sense. I think there's probably something more we can do there so that your rights are safeguarded, kind of like a search warrant. You can't go into somebody's house. You can't go through their things, their papers, and their personal effects unless a warrant is issued. And then you can go through that and violate someone's personal rights, right? So this kind of a thing, we have to walk a line with making sure that the Second Amendment and the right it guarantees all of us to possess weapons, protect ourselves, all those kind of things, is protected. But how do we find out someone like this who had no criminal history? Can we fill out a piece of paper? We do the instant check. There's no criminal history. There's nothing. What's going on there? What I have heard from some different sources in the last couple of days as this conversation comes up, is that maybe the time to get the weapon is expanded out further, and we do better background checks. Excuse me. So one of the things that comes to mind immediately, and you connect the dots with all of these things when it comes to investigation. Recently in the state of Arkansas, there was a young man who was hiking in a park, and a mother and father with their 2 young daughters were hiking in the park. And these people came together, and this young man is a school teacher.
Andrew McGadden.
He's a preschool teacher. That's active teacher. He worked in other districts, and he had a problem with these people. The mother ran and hid the girls and came back to help the father, and this man murdered both of them. This person is with our children. So what kind of a background investigation was done? Do we look at CCH and we ask the people in the application, gee, no, Joe's a great guy, and then we hire him? It turns out he murders people in a park. There's something that would have been able to be found if we did a better background. So I'm suggesting that the gun background may have to be expanded a little more. But the problem is the timeline. How long does it take? I know as a detective, we did gun backgrounds, and that was low on our priority. We had rapes, robberies, and murders and whatnot to deal with. And when we had time, we did the gun backgrounds and liquor license backgrounds. But that is where, if you did a more in-depth investigation, you may talk to people that are not on the application that might tell you, well, confidentially, this guy's, saying things about the Holocaust that are pretty weird. Okay, now you have to investigate that. You go online. Do you look? I think that's the only answer I can see here, because I do believe in our political setting today, it is a slippery slope. If we give up anything on our Second Amendment, we just had all these courts say, yes, you have a Second Amendment right. You can carry out in the public. That's a big change. That's what's been going on for many years. I think if we don't do it right, we're going to see legislatures start to, especially in places where they don't like guns, they're going to start to backslide on people's rights. And it has to be a balance. We don't want bad people like this having guns, but we don't want to keep Anthony Gangi from having guns just because somebody did something bad. So Lieutenant Joe doesn't have the perfect answer for this one, other than I would see in the essence of the investigation should be maybe a little more in depth. That's where I would start to look. That's where I would say, let's look at that process. If we talk to persons in this person's life, would we have heard anything from anybody that would have given us pause? His application is perfect. He had no criminal history, never been involved. But if I talk to his neighbors, his family, 3 kids he went to school with in high school, would they tell me something that maybe give me pause to go, I need to look at that further? And I think that's a long-winded answer for, I think, a very difficult problem.
This is very generalized to me, but I think it's something I can mention real quick. So I work in the prison system, and I'm used to people utilizing laws and rules and regulations in a way that protects them from doing things they shouldn't do. They may do gang stuff, hiding under religion. They believe they're protected by the rights, and that we have drugs coming in through legal mail because they know that staff can't really go through legal mail. So sometimes what happens here is there could be ways that the rights that we're so focused on protecting can also be misused. And sadly, when it comes to that, we look at things as extreme. Either we do or we don't. And the funny thing is, that's because we don't trust in, I guess, case by case discretion, if you will, because we're concerned that if the door opens and we take the right from Anthony, then all of a sudden I'm not going to get my gun. But you're not Anthony. Anthony's got concerns that you don't know about. But you're looking at Anthony as if he's a citizen losing his weapon, when they're looking at Anthony like, no, he's got some mental health concerns and all this other stuff. So sometimes we react to what we think is the full picture, and it's not. And then that's become the political argument, because, guys, politics is always going to be on the extreme. They want to win, lose. What's right is here in the middle. So I think, to be honest with you, we have to be wary that the laws that protect us can also be the same laws that can be misused because they protect us. I hope that makes sense, because I see it in the prison setting all the time. The same laws that protect my rights also can make it complicated for law enforcement to do what's right for someone who's violating the law, because now it becomes an obstacle to get to the the root of the concern. I mean, getting a phone record, or in the Emmanuel Harrow case, he has a right to be a parent,
right?
After you abused a child.
That's where the saying comes in, is the Constitution a suicide pact? We have all these rights, and we have, can it be used against us? We could vote in a communist government that takes away all of our rights in one fell swoop, but we voted for it. Constitution says people can run for office. If we decide to vote for them and they said, hey, you just voted for us and we're communists, and guess what? That Constitution is gone. We could certainly do that. And that's the delicate balance of living in a free society that has to balance individual rights, group rights, and right and wrong. We have to get it right, though, because it's I heard somebody saying today that for all the numbers of these shooter events that are horrific, I have grandchildren now in school. I'm scared all over again that something will happen to them, like I was with my children. And I want them protected, and I want to do the right thing. But if we look at that, it's a never-ending review of what's going on, what's the right thing to do, and how do we do it. There's only, say, 60 real school shooting events a year. Now, that's horrific for 60 families that have to suffer through that. But there are 350 million people. So we're going to make all these laws and change everything for really a small number. So I heard this pundit saying, so basically we have to accept dead children in a church every once in a while so that we can maintain our rights to guns, right? And it's hard to argue that that's not what it comes down to. But that's the balance. And that's unfortunate. I wouldn't want anything to happen to my children or grandchildren. I would be besides myself if anything did, because someone got a gun when they shouldn't have had a gun, but we didn't know. We didn't do the right investigation. I think this is in the crucible where a free society lives. And trying to work this out is as we know, not easy. But I think we can do more. We just need to think about it first. And it can't be politically motivated. It's got to be motivated on doing the right thing. I hate that cliche term, but doing the right thing. And what is that? Is that case by case? Is that a more review? I don't know. But I think that's the truth of the matter.
Yeah. And by the way, guys, doing the right thing is not conditional or case by case. Doing the right thing is doing the right thing. All right. Now, this next part, I'm going to read for a couple of seconds, maybe a minute or so, Joy. This will be the exhaustive reasons why someone becomes an active shooter. Did a lot of looking up today when I had a chance to kind of come up with some primary motivational categories. So I have a bunch of them right now. And then I have a few questions at the end, Joe, that I know you can answer them. You've answered them before, but you got to bear with me for about 3 minutes as I read all these possible motivations. So, guys, I am a little bit OCD as well, besides my ADHD. And you could probably tell from the books I write and all this other stuff. I have to do exhaustive. Now, granted, it's never really exhaustive. There's always could be something else there. But I want to go to why someone may become an active shooter. In this case here, this person had a target. I believe they were narcissistic, because when we read the manifesto, because that would be the next section, you're going to see that she tries to have a human connection with their family, but you're going to see narcissism hidden there when it's about, because of this grandiose event, you're never going to be able to have a normal life. It's intermixed. So it's like the effort to try to be this person, but reality is you're really this narcissistic whack job. I'm sorry, not to be rude, but it is what it is. All right, so primary motivations. There's going to be a group of them here. So for number one, I got personal grievance and revenge. So you got workplace termination, demotion or conflicts, academic failures, bullying or school-related trauma, relationship breakups, divorce or romantic rejection, financial stress, bankruptcy or economic desperation, legal troubles, lawsuits or perceived injustices, social rejection, humiliation, or perceived slights, family conflicts, custody battles, or domestic issues. Could that have been here with the transition? We don't know. Ideological extremism. We talked about extremism. Sorry, guys. I'm bad at words, so bear with me. I'm bad at names, bad at words, but I know what they mean. All right. So white supremacist, neo-Nazi beliefs, religious fundamentalism or radicalization, political extremism. So far right or far left, anti-government, sovereign citizen ideologies, incel, which is the involuntary celibate, misogyny, conspiracy theory adherences, or anti-immigration or ethnic hatred. I also got number 3, possible. I think this is possible for this individual because when you read the letter, it's hinted about how grandiose or how spectacular this is going to be in the context of, but you're going to have to live through it as my family member. Fame and notoriety seeking. So desire for media attention, infamy. That's why the officer in the conference said, don't stop giving her name, which I unfortunately failed at that a little bit, but it doesn't want to give her what she wants. Desire for media attention and infamy, competition with previous shooters for high scores. Let's not forget that. Joe touched on that. Grandiose delusions of historical significance, social media attention seeking. Sadly, that's a new thing. Desire to be remembered or studied, copycat behaviors inspired by previous attacks. Then you got mental health crisis state, so severe depression with suicidal ideation, which this person has that as well, because they say that in their letter, which we'll go over soon. Psychotic episodes of or breaks from reality, paranoid delusions or persecution complexities, bipolar disorder and manic or depressive phases, personality disorders, antisocial, narcissistic, borderline, substance abuse affecting judgment and impulse control. I add narcissistic because the higher you view yourself, the lower you view others. So the point where you're so high and people are objects, that makes it easier for you to commit to acts of violence against others with no compassion. Definitely sociopathy, psychopathy. All right, so social isolation and alienation, kind of touched on this, but chronic loneliness and lack of social connection. Now, mind you, guys, all these by themselves, but in context, like Joe mentioned before, it really matters. These all play out. An expert like Joe, he sees these without having, it just comes to his head without having to rationalize. It's in your experience. But when you're first learning this is like seeing things piece by piece, but being next to someone experiences how those pieces fit. So when you're doing it for a while, it's crazy what your mind's been able to put together through years of experience, because it's all this. Chronic loneliness and lack of social connection, social clusters of behavior, not the isolated ones. Perceived social rejection or ostracism, cultural or ethnic displacement, geographic isolation or relocation stress, generational conflicts or family estrangement, and online echo chambers replacing real relationships. And that's happening right now in the world of social media, where there are no interactions, and people, I don't interact with people. I interact with words on a screen, or I interact through emails. I have no idea how to interact with anybody. No sense of human connection. Domestic violence extension, intimate partner violence, escalating to mass violence. Maybe you wind up, I don't know, Joe cheats on me, and I get pissed off, and Joe's got a family event, and I come in and I take out everyone. But the main motive is I wanted to take Joe out, but now I wind up taking out everyone. Family annihilation extending to workplace or community. Child custody disputes escalating to school targeting. That's interesting. And stalking behavior expanding beyond individual victim. Crisis and life disruption. Recent major life changes like job loss, divorce, death of loved ones, terminal illness, because he mentions he believes he had cancer, which probably wasn't checked, but he probably felt something. Maybe he spit up blood, who knows? And that also, so you got depression, narcissism. We talked about depression, narcissism, thinking he had something terminal. Again, terminal illness, substance abuse, relapse or treatment failures, housing instability or homelessness, identity crisis or major personnel transitions. 3 more parts here. Misogyny and gender-based violence, so hatred of women or feminist movements, sexual frustration or rejection. Incel ideology, that's the celibate ideology, and entitlement beliefs. Traditional gender role enforcement through violence or targeting women-dominated spaces or events. And then you have 9 is online radicalization and nihilism. Exposure to extremist content and communities, gradual normalization of violence through media consumption, gaming culture intersection with real world violence. But again, is it the attraction? I think it's the attraction, not the influence, but rather the attraction. Nihilistic worldview development and anonymous online identity reinforcing antisocial behavior. That is big today, because at the end of the day, if you look at even the case of Colt Gray, they can become anybody they want online, say whatever they want, and they feel protected, and eventually they start to become that person wanting to act that out. And I got copycat and contagion effect. So media coverage inspiring imitations. That's why media's got to be very careful what you put out there, because some people right now, if there was another assailant like this, they would be watching this, wanting to be them. And now you got the copycat, because if we promote how dangerous they are, then next thing you know, you got someone wanting to be them or beat that score. That's a big thing. Manifesto studies and tactical copying, competition for casualty counts or notoriety, anniversary timing of previous attacks, because a lot of these people, the Columbine was a big thing for them. They really relate to Columbine. Shared symbols, language, or methodology with previous shooters, which Joe mentioned. And I want to talk about one last thing, Joe, and then we got the discussion questions. In isolation, we mentioned intersecting and compounding factors. So there's multiple stressors. Most shooters experience several factors simultaneously. This is key. Escalation patterns, gradual increase in threatening behavior or ideological commitment. That means, like cults, like cults, the more you're isolated, the more you don't have counter influence. All that you see or around you is this belief, however extreme it may be. And next thing you know, it just gradually increases until you have to act it out. You got to commit to the behavior that's demanded by that religion or that extreme. Triggering events, so specific incidents that push from ideation to action. And that's sometimes that's what they're waiting for, right? I mean, they're waiting for this to kind of leave my head. Where's the moment I can try this out? And the funny thing is, even though active shooters wind up taking themselves out, the serial killers and stuff like that, they wind up realizing that, you know what, the dream I had doesn't match reality, so I'm going to keep on doing it till it does. And they become worse. Look at Ted Bundy at the end, when he took out all the college girls in Florida. Trigger events. Okay, we did that. Access to weapons, legal or illegal firearms availability, social learning, exposure to violence as conflict resolution models, and substance use, drug or alcohol, removing inhibitions or affecting judgment. And usually, to be honest with you, I don't know if that's the case, but a lot of the times when people commit crimes, I know we said this before, I think me and Gary did, or me and Joe may have, but drugs and alcohol, guys, it increases the chance that you're going to have to commit to some impulsive behavior, something emotional. And it is a concern, because a lot of people say, oh, well, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, it's a victimless crime. Oh, it's not. It's the beginning of something that could be horrible. Every time I look at someone's PSI or CCH, most of them will have some type of abuse in there that led them to just act it out without giving a shit, because maybe most people do have empathy. Most people do have some level of compassion, but when they drink it away, in the moment they don't, they act and they wind up being remorseful extremely right after the fact, when the drugs are gone and they can't believe what they've done. And now, Joe, first question. Now, Joe, there was a lot there, so I need you to now repeat everything I said. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, let's start it.
And by the way, guys, I had a sheet in front of me. I want you to know what I read out loud, that's in that expert's head every day. That's in that expert's head every day, figuring out all that. That's everything he has to figure out in the moment. This is not as simple as someone coming up who has no experience in this and deciding, yeah, this person's this because they got picked on. It's a lot more than one thing. And because one thing, he may have got picked on, but what pushed him? And there's a lot of things going on in the person's head, how they perceived what's happening, their connection of being able to do something, their resources, who do they idolize? Because I can get picked on, but I can idolize a good role model. And maybe they're my balance, or I can idolize this piece of shit. And now maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's the person I idolize connected with my weapons, connected with my mental. There's a lot going on. And that is a lot to try to decipher in the moment when you don't have context. And when the media goes back and tries to put things out piece by piece, you should have saw these things. Well, of course you could connect it now because you got a puzzle, right? And at the end of the day, here's what happened. You got a puzzle. You're able to take the picture on the box, put it here, and put everything together. And now you know what the picture is. But when you're living in the moment, I don't even know what the hell I'm building. I got a million pieces here with no end result. So how the hell do I know what I'm building? I don't. But it's funny how later on when we do, we judge people for not seeing the cover of the box. Well, because you had it the whole time. Okay, so given that most shooters experience multiple contributing factors, should threat assessments focus on individual risk factors or patterns of intersecting vulnerabilities?
Okay. When we look at any individual, whether they do something good or they do something bad, it is a combination of their experiences and their interactions with the world around them, with individuals, with circumstances. We also look at each human being, the fact that we have the ability to think and we're sentient and we come up with our own things, and we all have feelings. So when I teach criminal investigation, one of the things I look at is what are the things that motivate us as human beings, good and bad, and do we understand them? So obviously that is the emotional component of human beings. So when we think about, what are good emotions? Love, joy, kindness, fun, happiness. When people are feeling those kind of things, they rarely ever show up at the church and kill children. When we're feeling anger, jealousy, rage, embarrassment, hurt, when we're feeling those things, our reactions are much, much different. So I'm going to use your example of a puzzle. When you take that puzzle of a thing of flowers and you see it on the box and you can see how everything fits together, now you dump them out and you have no idea where any of this goes. It doesn't make any sense. What's the first thing you do? You look for edge pieces, right? You look for edge pieces so that you get some kind of a framework to understand what you're about to do. So when we investigate, when we look at people, why they do these things, what motivates them, and what can we see based on understanding those motivations, then we can take the input that's coming to us, things people say, things that they draw, things that they write, things that leaks out of their behaviors, water cooler comments, things that their friends will tell us. Those are the lines, just like in the puzzle. We start to find those those flat lines, because that's going to give us a framework to try and fill in the picture, so to speak. So I thought that was an excellent metaphor for this, and that's exactly what we do. We have these emotions that motivate us, good and bad. Now you add those other factors. If a person is having some type of psychological problem where they don't see clearly, like I've had people insult me, and it's embarrassing sometimes, and you're angry about it, but you say to yourself, all right, it's somebody said something stupid, they didn't like me, it doesn't really affect my life, and you move on, right? Other people, when they don't interpret things properly, when they have mental situations going on, they may take that same slight, and instead of just incorporating and saying, well, is it really true? Am I really the biggest, dumbest dope on the earth? And well, no, I'm really not. But they call me that in front of everyone. And now I have this anger now has developed, and it's developed against you. And that might sit in me and seethe. And I want to get you back. I want my revenge. See, there's all negative human emotions, but without those emotions, we're just robots walking through this life. It's when we can't control them, and that's where you put mental problems into the deciphering of what's going on. Now add alcohol and drugs. So a person who doesn't have mental problems, you add alcohol and drugs, and we've all been there. When you're out and you're having a good time, the next thing you know, you're dancing on the table, and that's not like you, but that alcohol has changed your perceptions, and it's changed your emotions, and it changed what you think is normal. And I think we've all had the experience, and you wake up the next day and you say, oh my gosh, what did I do? Oh my God, did I really do that? Why would I do that? Well, at the moment it seemed okay. So when you have all these varying inputs into how a person understands the world around them and how it interacts with their emotions and their mentality, that's when you start to see this build up. And that's why I'm saying these things, you don't wake up on a Tuesday and say, I'm going to go kill all the kids in my class or shoot the kids in the church. That happens because there's other factors at play in your thought process. Maybe it's not those particular children that you have any problem with. You don't know them at all. What do they represent? Right? Sometimes people target people for what they represent, and it's going to assuage what I'm thinking and feeling. Well, you know what? I can't get the kid that got me, but I can get this kid. So something you had mentioned, as a society, don't we see people losing their minds over likes? Doesn't everybody want likes on the phone? They want likes, likes, and likes, and they go crazy. They'll do anything to get likes. Now, we live in a world where most people would be anonymous their entire life, but now we have social media. And you can come out there and you can have your 15 minutes of fame, and maybe it's more than that. Maybe you finally have something that says, I am somebody, right? For a lot of people, they never have that in their life. Have you ever seen someone who gets in a position of authority that doesn't know how to actually deal with the authority? They maybe have been underneath all this time. Now they get power and they overreact with the power because now it's my turn. Well, these are all the same exact factors, except when you move them into the criminal world, we have to look at the motivations, the reasons, the underlying things to understand it. Because if I'm going to interview somebody and I find out that they were bullied as a kid, and that's why they went and they shot 5 kids on the baseball field, and they were bullied, my conversation is going to be around how it felt to be bullied, right? I'm not going to go in and talk about them shooting people. We know what happens there. I'll get to the confession later. What I want to do is create a bond and have this person tell me things that went on in their head. And I would do that by talking about the experience. Gee, that must have been embarrassing when they did this. It must have been humiliating. You must have felt angry. And as we all know, anybody who does, I'm a hostage crisis negotiator. And one of the things we talk about is human beings have a tendency that if you say an emotion that someone is feeling, they will respond to it, right? So if I say, boy, Anthony, you seem really angry, and you're angry, you'll probably say, angry? You're not kidding, I'm angry. Can you believe they promoted this guy instead of me? Similarly, if you're not feeling angry and I say that, boy, you seem really angry, you might say to me, nah, I'm not angry. I am so frustrated with the fact that they promoted that guy and not me. I gave my whole life to it. Boy, you really are frustrated. When we say the emotion and people hear it, they have a tendency to react to it, good and bad, right? So we see how all of these things, if you think of, you ever think of a cauldron that's swirling around and that's a person. That's our mind. That's all of us, good and bad. Only sometimes we control it better than others. And then other people have all these other factors that causes them to react in ways that we wouldn't. And when we see a shooter like this, to try and figure out this person and the next person is to understand what was going on, what was their experience, what led them to believe these things, what attracted them to that. You can entice that. I say that all the time. When I teach interview to people, I say, can you elicit a reaction from somebody for something that can you activate a drive, right? So I've broken crimes down into want crimes and drive crimes. Want is something you want, but you can not get in trouble. I don't want to get in trouble. I'm not going to do it. A drive, you can't stop the thoughts. You have to do it, like a serial killer. They might put it off, but they have to do it. Can I incite that drive in a conversation? I can. How? By talking about the things that ignite the drive. Not whether it's a crime, it was good or bad. I can talk about, boy, the redheads. Can you imagine how redheads treat people? And that would activate that drive. Now that person starts to talk and say things. With these people that do these things, there are things in their lives that activate their drive to go do it. So what you were talking about, Anthony, is that buildup starts to happen, right? They have these feelings, they have these events, they have these mental conditions, and it starts to, and then as it builds and builds and builds, something interacts with that drive and they react to it. Usually and that buildup can be saying something finally, saying something inappropriate, making a comment, drawing something, telling someone you're going to do something. And then it gets to the point when I haven't relieved what's causing me the problem. And the only next step I have is to strike out in a big way now. I'm going to show you I've had enough of talking, right? We've all been in an argument, and the argument does what? It goes up and up and up till there's a crescendo. Well, for these people, that crescendo is that final act out of violence. And if we understand the steps that they're going to, and we look at the fact that's going on in someone's life, early intervention can help us de-escalate that situation and prevent the violence. It's a long-winded answer. I hope I answered your question.
No, it was great. I want to add one more thing to complement that thought. So you took the puzzle. I am going to take the authority thing that you pushed, going up in rank and the bad boss type thing. Well, you want to hear something funny is, again, I'm going to draw from my experience. I was an officer, had some authority, and then slowly they introduced me to power as a sergeant, a little more responsibility. You see how I adjusted power. I never became a lieutenant, so I took a jump into administration, superintendent, associate administrator, whatever. So technically, as Joe mentioned, imagine without, you're going through all this, you're wilding out, you're ready to act out, but the only thing you're missing is the power to do it. And here's the gun. Here's the weapon. That's your power. That's your final motivation. That's the do or die moment. And think about how rapid that comes. That's not like something you're introduced to. It's something that just comes right now. Boom.
Yeah. That's your catalyst. That weapon is the catalyst to the violence.
It makes it now a reality.
Yeah.
So I think that when it comes to weapons, I think it's yes, of course it's going to be the cluster of concerns we mentioned about the person itself, but then ultimately the ability to do it and carry it out.
Yes,
that's the biggest concern, right?
And I think when you bring that up, and we've all seen that video. I think most of us have seen the video of him writing on the magazines, and he's writing on the guns. He is focused on those weapons as an instrument of his action. That's why he wrote all over them. He's going to put this magazine in this gun, and it says "F you people," and I'm going to use it to kill those kids. And you start to see those connections, and it gets more and more powerful. But he's not saying idolizing those weapons, but those weapons have now become the vehicle for all this person is feeling and wanting to do, for him to go and act on it now. And those, you see, he wrote all over them. He idolized them. He made them part of the entire thing. It became part of the attack process, was writing on that stuff.
Yeah, and that's when they found out the Haiti or the chance that he wants the children to suffer. I got two more questions for this section, Joe, and then what we'll do is we'll go through the manifesto. I'll run through some quick thoughts on it, and I would love to get your final thoughts on the manifesto as well, so we can start wrapping it up. But I have two more questions for you that came my way related to this breakdown. I know you're very busy, so thank you for sticking around, because Joe knows when we do a show, it's going to be a while because we like to talk. And Joe also knows when you're doing stuff on breaking news, you got to do it quick. So Joe always makes himself available. So I love you for that, Joe, more than you'll ever know.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. And I know this video will do well. So at the very end, guys, Joe's going to give some information if you want to reach out to him, because he does have a business related to protecting schools or vulnerable places from what's happened just now. So, Joe, with such diverse pathways to violence, should prevention efforts be broad-based, so addressing social isolation, economic stress, or focused on specific high-risk ideologies and behaviors? So do we focus on it isolated, or do we focus on it more contextually?
Okay, I think the word that I would bring into play here would be a holistic approach. That's used in a lot of different industries, holistic approach. The overall, what do we understand? If we focus just on specific factors that lead to a violence thing, we're going to miss out on other things. So I think we have to understand what messages, and this is where sometimes it's very hard, I think, as a society for us to figure out how we're going to handle this, because what messages come to our society through the culture that we grow up in, through the communities that we're in, through the world that we interact with, through social media now. You think about how social media has changed all of our reactions with each other. How do we send out good messaging? Well, the first thing that comes up is we say, well, what's good messaging? Who's to decide what good messaging is? So our arguments with this concepts of right and wrong start very, very young in people's lives. I saw a video the other day of a father who was talking to his young son, who was maybe 5 or 6, and he was getting the kid ready to go to school. And he says, "Are you afraid of those teachers?" And the kid says, "No, Daddy, I'm not." "Are you going to take guff from those teachers?" "No, Daddy, I'm not." "Are you going to let them push you around?" "No, I'm not." And you listen to that messaging coming from a father figure, a mother figure, a respected figure, to a young, vulnerable child who's basically an empty canvas. The father might think, and my impression I got was that he's teaching his child not to be a pushover in the world. We're not going to put up with people doing wrong to us. But how is that message interpreted by that child? Does it tell him to respect authority? Does it tell him to respect himself? Or is it telling to him, you make the decision what's right and wrong, and you act on it? Consequences be damned, because I'm going to back you up. So we start to see these kind of messages coming to our society from every different angle. I teach a program on ethics. And one of the things in there is that I ask right off the bat, well, where do ethics come from, and moral behavior? And is every community see things exactly the same? No. So how do you teach ethics and morals? Because whose morals are you teaching? Whose ethics are you teaching? I disagree with that. So this is where this becomes, when we see in certain societies, historically and throughout the world, we see there's very homogeneous societies. Everyone thinks the same. Everyone has the same beliefs. Everyone has the same experiences. Everyone has the same, this is right and that is wrong. And therefore you see in those societies, the messaging from early on through the end of life are usually the same. They're consistent, good or bad, right? It doesn't matter the community. It could be good or bad, but it's consistent from beginning to end. Our society is such a conglomerate of so many different thoughts and ideas and who's right and who's wrong. We see the arguments out there. And I know this is going far afield, but I'm saying we look at, the concept of eat the rich are bad, destroy the rich, kill the rich, get rid of the rich. That's a real thought pattern that some people have, to the point that we had a guy walk up behind an executive of an insurance company and put a bullet in his head. And there are millions of people celebrating that guy because he did the right thing to get back at them, the way they take advantage of us. That man that was murdered may not have done anything to anybody. He happened to be an executive in an insurance company. He becomes the focus of the emotions and the experience of all those people who watch that guy with the gun and shoot him. And instead of saying, that guy was bad, that guy was evil, he murdered someone, we say, no, he did, well, if the insurance companies had treated people fair, he wouldn't have got killed. So that's a good thing. That is a hardening and a coursing of our society. We are seeing the result of that every day in our lives now. These shooters are exactly examples of all of these things. So to answer your question, do we focus on this or do we focus on this? You have to focus on it all as a holistic answer to your question. Where do we start with the messaging? Are we ever going to agree on what messaging is right? We used to say, the 10 Commandments, and I'm not talking religiously, I'm talking historically, the 10 Commandments basically gave out good rules for people to live by. Take God out of the equation. Don't commit murder. Don't lie about your neighbor. Don't covet what your neighbor has. Don't cheat on your spouse. In general, with God out of it, those are all pretty good rules to live by. It helps to make a society that interacts properly. We have taken all of that apart and we are left with the fragments of what should make for a normal society. And we have all of these things swirling around in this cauldron. So as a society, we all have different things we look at. Law enforcement, right? We look at the end result of what people did, what they led to. And that's when I get them, I investigate them, lock them up, I send them to you, you incarcerate them and make sure they follow the rules there and pay their penalty for their actions. The medical world, they see people's reactions to, hey man, drugs are cool, everybody use drugs and alcohol, and then they destroy their lives. And the medical world has it. So we have all of these disparate groups in our society that have things to say. Nobody believes the same thing anymore. There is no right and wrong. There's opinion, and that is what's going to make this difficult. That father telling that little boy, you don't take nothing from them. And then he asked him, if they do it, would you hit him? And the boy says, yes. And he goes, you're right, you hit him. You hit him hard, and I'll back you up. It's become a violence-soaked society where we can no longer reason or talk our way in and out of things. And we're seeing violence becoming the answer. You disagree with somebody politically, religiously, philosophically, smack them in the face. That's what they get. Well, the result is a guy going to a church and shooting children through the windows. Mm-hmm. So we need I would have to focus it down and go, in my house, I'm going to focus on good and kind and what's decent. And then I hope my neighbor does that. And I hope my school does that. Maybe I have to be on the school board. Maybe I have to go to meetings. I have to say my community, what is our beliefs? And then what do we put up in place in that? What do we put up with the people who watch over our society? Do we have ways for people to tell us, hey, Anthony's saying some weird things, you better check it out? And then do we have a capacity to go investigate it properly? Right? That's the bigger answer. Until then, this is going to continue. And we're going to be afterwards, me investigating, you controlling them. Right? And that's unfortunate. I don't mean to be pessimistic, but that's the only way to do this, is start small and figure out, what are we trying to say? What are we telling people? What's our world about?
Yeah, and what's great about that, holistically, you also have situational pressures. I mean, I know this may be tough to say, but when we do have an active shooter, it's quick to really focus on the individual, maybe go so as far as focus on their family. But do we ever look inwards? Do we ever look at maybe there's something that we could have done a bit differently? And that's a lot to ask of yourself because of the consequences, right? Like, if I admit that I could have done something better, does that connect me to this greater consequence of two children being lost, but sometimes it does take us a chance to step backwards and say, like, I'll give you an example for the media. Again, going after the media a little bit here, but bear with me, guys. Got an active shooter. You showcase how much of a monster he is, and hoping that, the public embraces that type of, animosity because you paint him as a monster, but then there's someone glorifying that vision. They want to be that monster too. So maybe we created the monster by showing them a monster. Maybe at a moment in their life where they're vulnerable, where they don't have an answer, but they feel that they have to do something. And all of a sudden, at that right moment where they're most vulnerable, the most impressionable, here comes this monster on the TV. And then that person says, that's who I want to be like. Why? Because they don't care about anybody else. And why should I? Because no one cares about me. So I think there is a role, because I think most of the time, the funny thing is even if there's a middle road, because even with politics, everybody wants to win, lose, because they know at one point, if it's not about winning and losing, then someone has to take responsibility of it, full responsibility. And nobody wants to take responsibility. Nobody wants to take the losing side. But I think sometimes, like Joe said, if we do it holistically, then at one point we have to ask ourselves a fair question. Could we have done something better society-wise? And again, it's not to minimize what people done. It's not to justify what they've done, because we're not giving them an excuse. They're still accountable. This is about the prevention. And it's crazy how some people, when you look at to prevent, they look backwards and they say, well, we're not responsible for that. We didn't say that, but now we're trying to prevent. So what could we do better? That's not having to say that we did this wrong and this person here is no longer accountable because, you should have done this, but rather could I have done something a little bit more? And a lot of the times, the funny thing is people don't want to take that ball. They don't. And that's the problem. The problem is that people don't want to take the ball, try to identify what they could do better, and then eventually, holistically, I get it. We may have an approach dealing just with the individual, but most of the time, be honest with you, these individuals could be a reaction to the pressure in society that we haven't addressed. And again, not giving them an excuse, but a lot of them have been bullied or whatever it is, and failed to find a resource that can help lift them up. Again, not minimizing what they've done, but it's sure worth exploring. Again, it's crazy how you bring up something, sounds like, well, you're giving them an excuse. No, it's not an excuse. It could be a reason.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's not an excuse. It's a reason. And if we understand the reasons and we see, okay, that was a bad way to treat somebody who's having an identity crisis, how do we interact with that person to help them? Not to belittle them, put them down, tell them they're right, tell them they're wrong. How do we help that person, right? That's where, if whether or not this person's gender identity had anything to do with them doing this, but if that was their problem, if that is part of why this happened,
let me ask
how
you,
do we treat that person?
Joe, you hit on something I want to ask you. I want to ask you something. And this I don't think has ever been asked before. I don't think so. It just came to me based on what you said. Does the person become a monster before or after the act? Because what I'm trying to say here is this. If he had the idea or she had the idea to commit the act, right? Are they worth saving beforehand, or is it just more about preventing them? Or once they do it, it's like, fuck them, they're a monster anyway. But it's funny because how many times do we prevent someone from doing something crazy when they're on the edge? We stop them. No one knows about it, but we stop them and we turn them around. They're not the monster, but they had the capability of becoming one. Now you get someone that carries out because we couldn't prevent it, and now they're fully the monster.
I think that's what a great question, and it's thought provoking. As I'm running through 52 scenarios in my head here, if you get someone who thinks to do something evil, like shoot up a church full of children, and they decide they're going to do it, and they plan it, and they visit the church, and they gather the weapons, and they write things all over the weapons, and they make videos about it, and they diagram it, and they pack the bag, and they head down to the church, but they have not pulled the trigger yet. That is an evil act. But can we prevent that person? Well, the difference between my work in this kind of a world as opposed to criminal investigation comes after they've done the horrible thing. This is, like I said early on, if we could intervene and stop this guy from pulling the triggers, not only do we save those children, we might be able to save this person, right? And someone who's suffering mentally or suffering because of problems, or they're just way out there because of whatever has happened to them. I think there is value in trying to save that person. You might not be able to save that person. They may just be bad. But I think for us, for people on this side of the equation, if you could save that person, that would be the thing to do. So are they the monster before or after? I think they're monstrous before. But after they do it, then they are the monster. And then you deal with them differently.
Joe, you know what's funny? You want to hear something funny? And guys, this is just a dialogue. We never know where it's going to go. Again, we're not minimizing, just a perspective. But you know what's funny? When we deal with youths that could be in trouble, I've dealt with it. Joe's dealt with it. 3 levels: prevention, intervention, suppression. Maybe there's a moment where I can prevent, or maybe they're involved a little bit, but maybe there's still that chance. But then there's a moment you give up and you suppress. They're too far gone. But I think when we talk about prevention, a lot of it does require a community approach. So again, it's hard for me to turn around and say, hey guys, we're going to share the responsibility of what happened. I'm not saying that, but sometimes as a community, it doesn't hurt to look and say, could we done something more without taking on the full responsibility of what the person did, but rather taking on some responsibility of not having it happen again. That's all. Now, I got one last question here before the manifesto, Joe, and then we'll read through the manifesto real quick, and I'll tell you why manifesto was written. But one last question for you, Joe. I have to ask this. At what stage in these various pathways to violence does intervention become most critical and feasible? During ideological development, crisis states, or planning phases?
I think in the ideological development of what is considered right and wrong, because that can be delayed. It can be, you can change somebody's way of thinking so that they don't see that as the correct path. Once they've started making the plan, I mean, you can stop the violence at that point. But what does that do for the person? So I would think out of those three, giving me those choices, I would say that whatever it is that's building them to think that that's a correct path to take, that would be the one.
You touched on something. So I got a thought in my head. Bear with me. It's easier to change when they're thinking through it as opposed to changing when they start to believe it.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because
Yes.
I think that's extremely powerful.
Well, you think about anything that we learn, all right? Anything that we learn, we start out learning the fundamentals of something, and we don't know, is this really good or not really good? Then as we learn more about it and we find we have an interest in it, it starts to mean something to us. We connect to it, whatever it is, and then slowly but surely we become it. And then at that point, for somebody to say, hey, you're wrong, you shouldn't be doing that. No, wait a minute. I worked my way through this. I get this. I am here now. I think about a career in law enforcement. We see lots of law enforcement people complain about the career, but who leaves? Not many people actually leave. You become that person, right? And that's not just that. Think about your religious journey. A lot of people, and that's a very fundamental thing. That's really deep, people's religion, no matter what your religion is. You start out as a child, you don't know whether it's right or wrong. You see your parents do it. They seem to think it's right. You start to learn about it. Maybe there's a rebellion period when you start to get older and you're in high school. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to church on Sundays. That's a waste of my time. I don't believe there's a God. And then life comes through, and either you maintain those beliefs by your experiences, reinforce that. And you see, there really is no God here. And I'm too stupid if I believe that. Or your experiences tell you, whoa, maybe there's something here I didn't realize. Let me look at it different, a different perspective. And then suddenly you have this, what we see all the time, people have this religious awakening. And now all of a sudden they see things they never saw before, and they are now rooted in it. Try and change them then. Well, it's the same thing with someone who has a negative ideology. It attracts them for a certain reason. Okay, so you could see, and I'm trying to think of one that we could think of, something that would be bad. People who like to, hit people over the head with baseball bats. Well, you start out thinking, well, that's terrible. I would never want to do such a thing. But then as you go along, you find out the people we're going to hit over the head with baseball bats are the people that like to hurt little puppies. Well, then we can maybe justify hitting them over the head with a baseball bat, because look what they do. I'm doing something good. And you reinforce that, what you said earlier, when you're in a world that's an echo chamber of that, where you're on social media and that's all we're talking about. Just like the guy that shot the insurance agent and all those people applauding him, people that people that are normal human beings that are thinking that, well, he deserved it. He got that. It changes once you start to not only identify with it, but you start to see it, you start to make it your own. And once you've adopted it, it's very, very hard for people to get away from those beliefs. That's why people go into negative beliefs. How do you get them out of it? Once they think it's right, that they've thought it through and it makes sense to them now you're the enemy for trying to get me away from this, right?
Yeah, I like that, because if you wait too long, like let's say you go past the ideological stage, you wait and you decide to cross in when they're either planning or going through crisis, they've learned to justify their decision already. I say that also with staff that may start turning to the dark side, when they may start manipulating them. If you don't get them when they're starting to fall into that negative behavior, they will start finding excuses for the negative behavior, because there's always going to be cognitive dissonance. there's going to be something that doesn't feel right with what they're thinking. But if you allow that to linger, they will start justifying their feelings in a way that aligns now with their new change of thought.
Right. Isn't that the essence of the juvenile justice system?
Well,
to take these kids who do something bad or stupid, or they head down a bad road, and readjust them so that they see it differently and they go on a different path. They don't ruin their lives with crime or ruin other people's lives or get themselves in trouble or get involved with drugs and alcohol and all this, that they get a chance at a better life, right? It's the same thing with these people. And I have no love for these people who go in and shot and killed people. But at some point, they were an innocent child and they went wrong. If you could save that innocent child when they're little, you don't have to deal with a person who shoots through a church window and kills babies.
And guys, this is coming from 2 law enforcement professionals, by the way. So this is the last section, guys. This is what everybody's been asked to manifesto. So now I'm going to do first the primary function of a manifesto. I'm going to read through a bunch of things. I'm going to give Joe a chance to comment on that. Then I'm going to talk about real quick the contents of the manifesto. Same thing, read through it. Joe will comment on that. Then we are going to read the manifesto. I broke it down real quick, and then I'll give Joe a final chance to comment on everything together. This way we could speed through it a little bit. So the primary function of a mass shooter manifesto. I have 6 things here. Well, 6 categories. So you need to bear with me there, Joe. Same thing as before. Okay, so justification and rationalization. So that's going to be a reason, one of the reasons for a manifesto, right? So I put being that hero, so framing violence as necessary, brave, or noble action. Victim blaming, portraying targets as deserving violence. We talked about that. Historical contextualization, placing actions within larger historical narratives, which I kind of, how he may have compared things to the Holocaust maybe or something. Moral imperatives, creating ethical frameworks that justify mass murder, dehumanization, reducing victims to symbols, statistics, or abstract concepts. Believe it or not, Jew, Black, in their mind, they could be just symbols of something that they hate. For us, we connect it to a race of wonderful people. They could connect it to a symbol that disgusts them, and therefore they kill the symbol. Revolutionary language, describing violence as warfare, resistance, or social change. Now we got this part, I think, touches on fame and legacy creation. So historical significance, right? Attempting to ensure remembrance and studies. Guys, when we read the manifesto, watch as all this plays out somewhere along the line. So if you got to rewatch this, take this down, you're going to see a lot of this in that manifesto, because I used that manifesto to draw this, and I used other manifestos as well. Media manipulation, create the narrative, right? Create content designed for maximum media coverage. Intellectual grandiosity, right? Presenting complex ideological theories. Martyrdom narratives, framing death as sacrifice for greater cause. Comparative positioning, measuring against previous shooters. I'm the better one. Cultural impacts. I got more kills, let's say. Cultural impact, attempting to influence social or political discourse. Then we have, again, these are all reasons for manifestos. Ideological transmission, recruiting tool, inspiring copycats, attacker followers, teaching manual, providing tactical or strategic guidance, movement building, contributing to broader extremist ideologies, normalization, making extreme views appear more acceptable, radicalization catalyst, pushing others towards violence, and symbolic communication, using code references understood by specific communities. 3 more left on here. Personal expression and control. It's the final voice. It's ensuring personal perspective is heard. A narrative control, shaping how actions are understood. Understood. That's key. This is the why behind the action, the motive, not the intent, but the why, the motive. Identity assertion, defining self on own terms. I define me. I define my actions. So no matter what the media may paint me later, this manifesto tells you who I am in the moment. I think that fell into play with Kohlberger too, when he took the picture after his killing of the Idaho 4. No matter how we would paint him, he had this picture that showcased who he was. It's an effort to create how they're going to be seen. I think that's a big thing. Grievance documentation, recording perceived injustices, emotional release, expressing anger, pain, or frustration. As Joe mentioned, a way to kind of lash out, power and balance the scale. Power restoration. Well, there it is. Feeling control over the final message. Then you have relationship management, family messaging. When it's in this, you'll see it in this. Family apologizing, explaining or expressing love. But in this case here, when he does that, you're also going to see narcissism. You'll see it. Blame deflection, protecting loved ones from responsibility. Guilt management, addressing anticipated family trauma. Legacy preservation, attempting to maintain family relationships posthumously. Social positioning, managing how community views the family. And forgiveness seeking, attempting reconciliation through explanation. And the last one for this part is psychological processing, trauma documentation, recording personal pain or experience, mental state explanation, describing internal experiences, decision justification, working through moral conflicts, reality testing, confirming or questioning personal perceptions, emotional regulation, managing overwhelming feelings through writing, and cognitive organizations, structuring chaotic thoughts and emotions. Joe, there's a lot there. So before we go into the content of a manifesto, this was more of why it's done. There's a lot there, but you know this. So what's your thoughts on all that? Does that hit as to why someone, or the many reasons why, probably put together? Usually it's going to be a bunch of reasons merge, but does this make sense for why someone would write a manifesto? Because a lot of people think that they may not feel anything, so their manifesto may not care what their family thinks. But a lot of them in their manifesto, I realize, do write about how much they love their family and it's not their fault, to try to kind of alleviate, their feeling of responsibility and take onus of it all themselves, which may go in opposite of what some people may think. But what's your thoughts on there, Joe? There's a lot.
Well, as we listen to all of those different reasons, I think every one of them is valid, and it's all unique to the individual, and there can be a confluence of a whole bunch of things in there. As I was writing this down, I was making some notes here for myself. One of the things that we find out in crisis intervention, when I do crisis intervention kind of work, de-escalation, we find out that we see people universally almost, that when they get upset and they go into crisis, big crisis, like somebody goes to a church and shoots up little children, that's big crisis. They have a big problem and this is what they're reacting to. Or little crisis, when you argue with your significant other and it gets out of control. The reality is, what I find is that when you break it again down to its essence, when I have someone here who's in crisis, in many people, the one feeling that's repeated over and over is that they are not being heard. I'm saying something, I'm expressing something, I'm feeling something, and you're not hearing me. And then it gets amplified that no one's listening to me. And we usually bring these things to an end when we interact with someone as a hostage crisis negotiator, to let them know, I do hear you. Not saying you're right or wrong. I hear what you're upset. You sound angry. I am angry. Boy, that must be frustrating that happened. And they get vented. They feel like someone's hearing them. So a manifesto might be a way to make your declarative statement. I am tired. No one's hearing me. I'm going to do this horrific act to get your attention. And then you're going to read this and you're going to know. All right. The Sandy Hook shooter. This kid made videos, which you could say was his manifesto. He came out and he told everybody what he was going to do and why he was going to do it. And then he said, you're all going to know my name then. This guy felt like he was a nobody, and this was his vehicle that people don't listen to him. And he goes into that in several of the videos that he made. You all told me I'm a dumbass and I'm the bad one. Well, you're all the dumbasses. You're the bad ones. And I'm going to show you, and you're all going to know my name. That's a video manifesto. Manifesto is a way of making a declarative statement. Under all of those things in that arena you just gave us, there was dozens of them. And like I said, I think each one is valid depending on the person and their experience. What about somebody who goes in as having a marital problem and they're not being heard? They feel like they're being cheated. They're not being, the wife cheated on me and she got the house and I have to pay this money and my life is ruined. And what do? They go in and they kill the kids. and then themselves. Why would you kill the kids? Because you're trying to say something to that wife, right? So one of the things that people might have a manifesto for is for just that reason. You made me do this. It's a way of purging, I think, maybe those negative internal feelings. I wouldn't have had to kill these children in the church, but look what you did to me. You made me do this. Somebody that kills their children and then themselves, and leaves the wife there to deal with the grief afterward. Or the wife kills the children and the husband has to deal with that grief. You made me do this. I want you to feel the pain that I felt, right? So I see that they want to be heard. What's the purpose of a memoir? Right? You're pumped up on yourself and you think, hey, I have something important to say to the world. I'm going to write my memoir. Well, maybe you're someone who's lived an extraordinary life. Maybe you led the troops in D-Day and you want to write down that story for posterity. You want everyone to know what you believed. Why did you send the troops? Why were you willing to sacrifice these young men for the greater good? What was your belief, right? So we write memoirs, which is really another form of a manifesto. So when we see these people that write these things, we go to it with the thought and the eye of there's going to be a lot of clues in there as to why they did what they did, but a lot of them can also be veiled. Because I think one of the things you brought up there is that they may not see it clear about their own faults, what caused them to be involved in this situation, to have the negativity in their life. Maybe they caused it, but they don't want to see it. So therefore they lay it off on reasons. Here's the reasons that this happened. If this never happened to me, I'm an innocent here, right? So a manifesto can also lay out your beliefs about how something should be done. And when I look at that, I look at my book, The Investigation. Why did I write that book based on a criminal double homicide I investigated? Because I thought I did it correctly. And I wanted to document, here's what I did, here's why I did it, and here's how you can do it. I'm trying to pass that on to people. So the next person who's investigating a homicide might read that book and do the right thing, or think of something they might not have thought of. It's a way for me to put it out there. It's a manifesto, it's a memoir, it's a learning tool. So I think these things that we have the audacity to write them down is for lots of various reasons. And I think we want to be heard. We want to blame you. We want you to feel bad about what you've done to me. We look at a dying declaration. One of the things that the courts recognize clearly is when someone is dying, they're on their deathbed, and they make a statement. That is considered by the courts to be inherently truthful, because we believe as a society that if someone's dying, they're not going to want to lie going out the door. They're going to tell the truth. So you might get them say, okay, there's 3 bodies buried at the farm. I killed them. That's their dying declaration. They might tell you, I did it for this reason. The money is buried over there, whatever it is. We want to make that final statement before we go out. And we do that through some kind of a statement, verbal, videoed, or written, right? And the manifesto is the written statement that I think covers all of those things you talked about, depending on the individual and what they're feeling. There could be multiple things. They could be real. They could be imagined. But we can, as investigators, glean a lot if we don't just read the words, but then we read the words in the manifesto. We compare that to the actions that they actually took, all the other areas of information we got about them, the other things they've said and done, what people know about them. And this is how we put all of this together in a bundle. And you can certainly then at some point maybe start to see the truth of what went on in this situation and what was the bigger message they were trying to send. Was it, look what you did to me? Or was, I did something great and I'm telling you, I want to be heard. I want to be remembered. I am somebody now, right? So all of those things, I think, come together in a manifesto.
Yeah, and guys, part of prevention, I mean, me and Joe done videos. Everybody does videos on, surveillance, drills, response, all that stuff. But this is a video today on addressing the potential shooter, because that is part of prevention. And this part is a community approach. Now, again, I got one more part before I read the manifesto, but mind you, everything that me and Joe just discussed and what we're going to discuss next, you're going to see clearly when I read the manifesto. Okay, but I got one more part left, and this is going to be the specific content of the manifesto. So we gave the reasoning, right? But now let's talk about the specific content. So you're going to have target selection and justification. So you're going to have geographic convenience or familiarity. So again, maybe the church, you're trying to get some familiarity with it. That's why I believe that did happen. Plus, he was a member of that church. Symbolic significance, religious, political, cultural, possibly. Perceived vulnerability or security gaps. Again, a school, church, kids. Personal connection or grievance history. He used to go to the school. Maximum casualty potential. If he would have got in, he would have had, or she would have had what they would have want. They would have want those numbers, and that would have gave them the numbers. Media attention likelihood. Guys, I want to mention that again. Target selection, part of that is media attention likelihood. Shooting up a school full of kids is going to get them what they want. Tactical planning and methods, that's going to be in the manifesto. So weapon selection and acquisition strategies, site reconnaissance and security analysis, because that's what they're all looking at now. Hundreds of pages of manifestos that relate to probably the planning. Timing considerations and optimal conditioning. Why not do it at mass? Escape planning or suicide preparation, because he was going to come in or she was and secure the doors. So they're trapped. Maybe pull the fire alarm, get everybody running out, and it's open game. Evidence destruction or preservation. And believe it or not, guys, evidence destruction is what? Also killing yourself. Killing yourself is the ultimate evidence destruction, because no matter what the police figure out, sure, they'll have the evidence, but the only person, like you, that person doing the shooting, that's what they want. Now, granted, they got to take out the threat, but if they could have that threat alive, they want answers, because in the end, answers help us prevent. Media release coordinations. And again, Joe, just put this question in the back of your mind. Maybe you could address it real quick. But would you think the public may want the threat taken out because they think that's where the ultimate punishment is? But do you think the victory is taking the threat out so they don't go to court? Or don't go to the justice, or is the true victory keeping the threat alive? Because it's not so much about the benefit of keeping them alive, but rather the study of what happened to this individual. Because the only person that's really going to know that is going to be them. They're going to know the subjective feelings that they had that led to this. All we could do is assume. They're going to know. Ideological exposition. So core belief systems and worldview, that's going to be in there. Enemy identification and characterization, that's in there. Historical precedents and inspiration, in there. You talked about the Holocaust. Future vision or desired outcomes, recruitment appeals or calls of action, and theoretical framework and philosophies. Guys, you're going to see all this. Personal history and grievances, childhood trauma or formative experiences. Educational, Joe mentioned that before, by the way, educational or career disappointment, relationship failures or romantic rejections, social ostracism or bullying experiences, mental health struggles or treatment histories, substance abuse or addiction issues, family and social messaging, apologies and expressions of love, which you're going to see here, explanations for disappointing family, instructions for after death, blame deflection and protection of loved ones, attempts to maintain relationships posthumously, guilt management and forgiveness seeking. Okay, Joe, that's what I have for what would be in the content. What's your thoughts on all that? And then we're going to go ahead and read that manifesto.
Okay, so let me address what you said to keep an open question in my mind there. As an investigator, I found it very valuable that we had time with Ted Bundy to listen to, even though he was manipulating and he was lying, some of the truth came out. And when the investigators talked to him as though, not that you did these things, Ted, but if someone as brilliant as whoever did this did it, how would it happen? And he gave them a lot of information about how a serial killer thinks, targets their victims, etc. I found it very valuable. As a human being, having that person wiped off the earth is a satisfaction, that we don't have to listen to them mock us, mock the victims, on and on. So I think There's a duality there. We saw this Koberger guy who killed those 4 kids. He got to say he didn't want the death penalty. He didn't want to die, so he would plead guilty. But he didn't have to tell us why he did it. He didn't have to tell us where the knife was, right? As an investigator, I would like to sit down with that guy and find out why. Well, and I have my own theories on why he did what he did. But the reality is, we would want to know that, not so much for his case, but for the next one. And that's how investigations work. You build on everything that's come before. So when I look at that, I think in society, everyone's happy that Koberger, well, he didn't beat it in court and get away with it. He's got 4 life prison terms. He's never getting out of jail. That's satisfying. That's like him, if he killed himself in jail, it'd be the same thing. But we didn't get to learn from him. We didn't get to figure out why he did what he did. So that's my answer with that. Personally, as an investigator, keeping these people around, that they're alive, to find out why, because we're going to learn something from every one of them that we might be able to recognize in the activities of the next person. You see how that works? If we kind of put all of these people together and see all the things that they did, and we understand why they did what they did, what motivated them, what bothered them, what drove them, then when we're looking at the next person that we maybe have a little bit of time to investigate, or something weird is said and we look into it, we might be able to connect one of those previous things that we learned to what this person is doing here. Maybe we can prevent, or maybe we can hold accountable and prevent the next one, right? So that's kind of where I kind of go with that. And if you could just repeat your question back to me, because I was thinking about that and I went off.
No, I think you answered it. The only thing I was going to say, if you wanted to, I gave you all of what would be inside a manifesto, because the first thing was, why would someone write a manifesto? Now, this part I put was what would be in a manifesto. So I don't know if you wanted any comments on why those things would be in a manifesto. So I discussed briefly, these are the things that I thought would be contents in the manifesto. I'll just go over the top categories. Was I put target, selection, and justification, and I dropped those in. Tactical planning, ideological exposition, personal history and grievances, family and social messaging, and that's it. Was those 5?
Yeah, I think, Anthony, and thank you for refreshing me. I think that all goes back to probably an answer I had, 2 questions ago. Was they want to make a statement, they want to be heard, they want to say they were right, or say someone else did something to them. I think that's the reason that all those things go in a manifesto.
Love it. Now, guys, bear with me. It's the last part of the show. I am going to read the 4-page manifesto. I'm going to break down. But, guys, I gave you a lot of knowledge. Joe gave you a lot of knowledge right now on a new way to look at this manifesto. So if you want to go back and revisit what we just said, and then, have some fun with this a little bit. Not to be rude, but just for a learning thing. Have some fun. You're going to see some of these things here. So now let me pull out the manifesto. All right, so let me get to the first page here. I think that's the last page. That's the second page. This is the first page. Okay, so hold on. Let me just make sure. Yeah. All right. So let me do. I have the manifesto here. I just got to match the picture. I think. Is it this one? You're not going to be able to see. Yeah, it's this one. Okay, guys, Joe may not see it, but I can see it, so I'm going to read it. To my family and friends, I don't expect forgiveness. And wait, guys, just as a foundation, remember, guys, I'm going to break this up later on anyway, but just as I go through it, I want you to picture this. His connection, it looks like on a surface level, he wants to connect with his family, kind of make the final love plea to his family, but you're going to see hints of narcissism in here too, which makes me think that doesn't matter what he's saying to his family, the narcissism really speaks out. That to me spoke the most relevant. Okay, so, and there's a lot of conflict here. He doesn't want to hurt his family, but then he kind of hurts the family. So to my family and friends, I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't expect any apology. I have to hold. Wait, sorry. Let me apologize. I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't expect any apology. I have to hold much weight. But to my family and those close to me, I do apologize for the effects my actions will have on your lives. Now, I want you to take note as I read this. Also, I said hints of narcissism. Also look for hints of conflict. Please know I care for all of you so much, and it pains me to bring this storm of chaos into your lives. This will affect so many more people than the ones that are immediately involved. And to me, that's the first hint of narcissism. Like whatever he's going to do is going to affect so many people. Very grandiose, very subtle, but it's going to escalate a little bit. You'll see. To my mother and father, I'm sorry I didn't turn out as you had hoped. You did not fail me. You gave me so much. I truly appreciate the love you have given me. I feel I was raised to be a good person. I've kept those traits of empathy, self-sacrifice, and good character. Please do not think you have failed as parents. I was corrupted by this world, and I've learned to hate what life is. I learned to hate what life is. Now, that's a great. What do you mean by corrupted by this world? See, again, that's why me and Joe covered this. We did. We said basically maybe there is something there, some type of social pressure or something that, again, not to minimize what they've done, but life is love, conflict, but life is pain. That's powerful in the context of what he did. Life is love, life is pain. There is too much to accept, too many things to put up with just to live. So now this comes the part we talked about in effort, suicide, depression. I'm tired of the pain this world gives out. Now we start to see something else, a chance to pay back. Please move on and continue to give your love to my brothers and sisters and the rest of the world. So there's a little grandiose here, but it does make sense. If I die, you can no longer love the other kids. That's how powerful your love is for me. But I'm telling you, it's okay. Give them love. They may not forgive you, but now this is the conflict here. They may not forgive you, but you need to move on from me. Like it's going to be that much to the point where they can't even deal with their other children. Forget my life and the pain I've brought. I love you both. Thank you, everything. I'm sorry. To my siblings, I'm sorry for forever tainting the rest of your lives. Now look at the impact on that. I mean, it could be true, but that's a very grandiose statement. Your careers, lives, relationships, all will be turned upside down. On the surface, oh, maybe no, it's grandiose. It's a narcissistic individual telling you that their actions are going to have that much of an impact. Please hold on to who you are and not who I am. Change your names if you must. I wish I could tell you that before I go, but please know. Now let me get to the second one. But obviously, I think people could start seeing some of the grandiose statements. The second one is, I think it's this one. Is that the one? Yeah. I love you all and truly appreciate the time I have spent with you. I have such an amazing family, and it hurts me to throw the wrench into the works of you good people. I feel hope when with you. I cherish our time together. I appreciate all that you have taught me, and I felt inspired to be like you when I grew up. I hope you are able to move on again. Here he goes back to again, and continue your lives without being forever followed, forever haunted by my actions. Forget me and all that I am. Hold on to yourselves and your loved ones. I love you all. So again, very grandiose. It is grandiose, guys. And to my friends, I trust you all to give your memory of me. I trust you all to give your memory of me however you see fit. I am sorry for the confusion and heartbreak this will bring. I truly appreciate all of you for showing me a good life and helping me through dark times. I've had so many good times that gave me hope. Unfortunately, this world has too much pain to deal out that I can't cover up with the good sides of life. I hope you all can move on and forget the pain I've caused. It's actually funny, real quick. He's more humble with his friends than he is with his family. And I think I thought that was unique because that's the first time he's basically saying, forget the pain that I've caused. I don't think he is grandiose with that statement. I have wanted this for so long. I am not well. I'm not right. I'm a sad person, and we covered about depression, haunted by those thoughts that do not go away. So when I first see this, I'm thinking now maybe suicide, maybe something with depression makes sense. But remember, we know what he did. So the earlier statement before was a bit of a hint, love and then pain, because now we kind of have that hint because we know what he did. But at this point here, if I didn't know all that, he didn't do all that, this to me would be more of a suicide letter. Again, we're haunted by those things that do not go away. I know this is wrong, but I can't seem to stop myself. I am severely depressed and have been suicidal for years. So see, when you see stuff like suicidal for years, now it makes you think preventive measures. Just thinking suicidal for years. So again, if he was alive, and I'm again not minimizing, just hear me out, that would be something worth exploring. Only recently have I lost all hope. So what happened recently? And decided to perform my final action against this world. I'm thinking this, I could be wrong, but if I could just make an assumption here, and again, I could be wrong, so please don't take it the wrong way. I think what happened was he battled with who he wanted to be. That's the suicide for years. Then he finally becomes the woman, and it's not what he wanted, but it's too late to go back. That's what I'm thinking, but I could be 100% wrong, but just we'll never know, to be honest with you. Only recently have I lost all hope and decided to perform my final action against this world. Now, we know the context here. We know the context is that he does try to hurt people. He does. So now we know that this is his final act is going to be trying to take people out and then taking himself out. But if you looked at this in the context of suicide, well, then, at that point here, it could be, maybe he is just going to take himself out. And if I could think about it, am I extreme? I don't know. But maybe when he was a child, he was battling through identity. And maybe in his mind, if I killed the children, it's saving them because they don't have to go through the same thing that I did when I had to discover who I want to be. Maybe. I'm really pushing, but again, you're never going to know. I want to die. I'd rather die on my feet now than live on my knees constantly in pain. So I thought that was interesting. Now we got the third part. I think that's this one. Let me just double check. I think I'm dying of cancer. No, that's the wrong one. Hold on. It's this one, right? No, that's the final. It's this one. No, it's this one. Wait. It can't be either one of them. You know what? Let me read this one out loud because I don't think I have it there. I think I'm dying of cancer. It's a tragic and it's a tragic as it's a tragic end as it's entirely self-inflicted. I did this to myself as I cannot control myself and have been destroying my body through vaping and other means. I think I have lung cancer. I have felt many pains that make me think I am past the point of recovery. So that could be the other issue. But again, the reason why I looked at it is the other way is he said I've been suicidal for many years. So I'm thinking like, okay, well, what could happen years ago? And we know that he transitioned. Now you have the chance that he thinks he has cancer and it's hopeless, even though he probably never got checked. I have felt many pains that make me think I am past the point of recovery. Mind you, he says it makes me think. So he doesn't know. So that's weird. How is he hopeless if he thinks? That's very tentative. That the statement should have been maybe I know. It wasn't, I think. So I still go back to my transition. I do want to recover. See? So that goes to show you that where am I? Sorry, I felt many pains that make me think I am past the point of recovery. I do not, okay, here it goes. I do not want to recover. I do not want to throw my life away by rotting in a hospital bed. I don't want the rest of my life to be a cancer patient in and out of hospitals, constantly being fretted about with people afraid to be too happy around me. Fuck that. I want to go out on my own means. Unfortunately, due to my depression, anger, and twisted mind, I want to fulfill a final act that has been in the back of my head for years. That to me says what I think is right. I still think that the relationship to him in the final act is, hey, I'm going to die. Joe said it before. Death is that declaration, the final declaration. So he says, I'm going to die on my own terms. I'm not going to let cancer kill me. So I had this final act in my head. I got something I want to carry out. And I think it relates to the transition. I could be way off, but the transition and maybe the battles he went through as a child, and maybe he thinks that I can save them by doing this. You all are what keeps me going. I find no more interest in anything material. I have only an interest in my mission and love for my family. He calls it a mission. If I didn't have such an amazing group of people around me, I would have been gone much sooner. And by much sooner, again, probably before he thought he had cancer. I just want to escape from this world, escape from the constant bills, shitty jobs, shitty people, and injustice of America. I am done with this. I will not bow. I will be selfish and leave you to pick up the pieces. See, that's the conflict. You care about the family, whatever. Then you say, I'm going to be selfish, and you got to pick up the pieces. But it's my fault. Blame me, but please move on. The statement's in conflict. Whether you accept my apologies or not, I hope you can all move past this. Again, he's grandiose, and continue your lives. Remember to be good people. Now more than ever, the world needs more love, and yet he's going to dish out hate, even if you don't get it in return. That's probably more about how she felt about the world. Please find hope, find love, and stand up to injustice. And the last part is this one, which says, I love you all. I remember you. Pray for the victims and their families. I love you, Dad, Mom. Now, I think that's when you officially know, if you would have got this letter beforehand, they're going to commit to an action to hurt others. P.S. Get over yourself and make up with Mom. She loves you. You need to grow up and accept that times just keep on something moving. You either will stay in the past and rot, wasting your life and happiness away, or you can grow up and move on from things. We all love you. And P.P.S. I wouldn't recommend any of you to read my journals unless you really want to, but be warned. So what he said there is read my journals. That's what he said there in that final statement. Now, Joe, we could do two things, your choice. We could break this down real quick, but I do have a whole list of things here, and then we can get your whole final thing with these added thoughts here, or you could do it now and then we can revisit. I got some notes I have here that I was going to run over first if you're okay with it, and then
you hear your notes.
Yeah, because I think it could also add to your dialogue as well. As you know, me and Joe have been thinking on this. So, Robin Westman's manifesto, this is how I broke it down. He described hate for everyone except for, I got some background here. Described hates for everyone but mass shooters. Handwritten manifesto addressed to family and friends, including statements, I'm sorry to my family. That's the only people. Multiple videos. This is a little bit about those. Multiple videos totaling over 10 minutes of content. Weapon displays. Wait, hold on. Sorry, guys. I'm reading from earlier. Hold on 1 second, guys. I read the wrong thing. I knew that was wrong. Where is it? Where is it? Joe, give your thoughts real quick. I lost my side of the notes. If you don't mind.
No, not at all. I was making a lot of notes here. First of all, your point about him being a narcissist, I think when you listen to all the 4 pages, the back and forth of his commentary, words mean things and how we say the mean things. This is a manipulative letter. This is a self-centered letter. This is a hateful letter. He's mixing a lot of things here. He's trying to slap his family in the face. I hear that in the background. The fact that he goes on and on, his rantings are bigger. What he's about to do is bigger than everybody else. Even though I shouldn't do this and I'm going to hurt you all, but why do it, right? Especially when you go further down, when he's talking about he wants to die, he wants to be done. This life is so cruel. The life is so this and that, the other thing. Then you know what? Just kill yourself. End your pain and kill yourself. Why would you do all this other stuff other than to, and this is my initial reaction to hearing this, than to reach out and slap your family, slap your friends, slap these innocent victims as opposed to you're just so miserable. You're confused. Your life has been horrible. I'm sorry that I'm going to kill myself. That's going to be painful for all of you, but I need to go. He could have done that. He didn't. He did everything but that. And Anthony, when you said maybe he thinks he was removing those children from the same kind of pain that he suffered, I considered that when this first happened, and I heard who this person was. I said, okay, there's a possibility that maybe he sees himself in those children when he was feeling a certain way and he didn't get treated properly. He was berated. He felt they made him uncomfortable, whatever, that he didn't want them to go through what he had to go through. But after you read that entire thing and you see what he did, and he said, oh, pray for these kids. There is nothing in the rest of that document where he talks about the innocence of those children, how they were victimized, that he's going to help them. I didn't see not one word of that in there for those kids.
That's a good. Hey, Joe, let me ask you a question about that, because that's a very good point you made. So let me ask you a question, though. So if I don't know if that's a bastardized level of empathy here, if he takes out those kids with that idea, but he does call them victims. Mm-hmm. Remember, at the very end, he calls them victims. And I sense that, if I was taking out something I thought was evil, I wouldn't be calling them victims. That's, I wouldn't call them victims. So I felt
them the innocent. I would have called them the innocent children. He called them victims for what he's going to do to them.
Okay.
Right? I didn't see any empathy in there for maybe there's a little boy in there who's suffering and doesn't know who he is, and none of that existed. From beginning to end, this was about him, me, and he's slapping all of them people in the face going out the door. Even at the end, he's so confused. He's such a train wreck. His life is miserable. He's going to give his brother some kind of sage advice at the end. You better do this if you want to make absolutely a bad person, confused, suffering, maybe all those things. But in the end, evil and bad with what he did. If he was suffering so bad he wanted to go, he could have put the gun in his own mouth and killed him. But instead, he shoved this in the face of his family. I'm sorry that I'm going to do this. Sorry, you have to live with what I'm going to do. You change your name and move on. My actions are bigger than all of you. Absolutely horrendous. I don't believe any positive word in there about loving anybody. This is an angry individual.
No, I agree. So I love both, because I actually see 100% where you're coming from too. So I found it. So Joe, I may give you one more if you don't mind, after I read all this, if you have anything else you want to add.
Sure.
So the psychological analysis by themes. Okay, so first I wanted to approach the family relationship management. So again, I have multiple expressions of love and appreciation for family, attempts to absolve parents of responsibility. You did not fail me. Specific advice to family members about moving forward. So I'm looking at things isolated now. Instruction for practical matters, name changes, reading journals, and contradictory messages of love while planning devastating action. Just what Joe said. Psychological function, attempting to preserve posthumous relationships, managing guilt about harming loved ones, maintaining self-image as caring family members, and controlling narrative about family blame and responsibility. Okay, I got self-justification and rationalization. So claims of terminal cancer as justification. I think I'm dying of cancer. Positioning violence as preferable to slow death. I don't want to throw my life away by rotting in a hospital bed. Framing it as escape from constant bills, shitty jobs, shitty people. I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. I thought that was interesting. Psychological function. It creates moral framework that makes mass violence seem logical, transforms suicide into martyrdom and a martyrdom narrative, deflecting from ideological motivations to medical personal ones, and presenting violence as noble resistance rather than harmful aggression. Now, victimization and external blame. I was corrupted by this world, complaints about injustices of America. Life is pain. There's too much to accept. I'm tired of the pain this world gives out. What's the function of that? Shifting responsibility from personal choices to external forces. So he's being pressured. It's not his fault. It's the pressure of society or whatnot. Justifying violence as response to societal problems. creating victim narratives that position shooter as wrong party, and avoiding accountability for personal decisions and actions. I got mental health as well. I'm severely depressed and have been suicidal for years. I'm a sad person haunted by those things that will not go away. Only recently have I lost all hope, and references to self-destructive behaviors like vaping. What's the function here? Documenting genuine mental health struggles, creating sympathy and understanding from readers, explaining violent ideation as medical condition, and providing context for family to understand decision-making. Now, control and legacy management, about the narrative. Detailed instructions for family behavior after death, warning about reading personal journals, advice about name changes and moving forward, and I will remember you. Pray for the victims and their families. Psychological functions, asserting control over post-death narrative, managing how he will be remembered, attempting to minimize damage to family reputation, and position himself as concerned about victims while planning to create them. Critical contradictions and psychological insight. The love violence paradox, right? Expresses deep love for family while planning actions guaranteed to devastate them. Claims to want to protect family from pain while creating maximum pain. Shows empathy for future victims while planning to victimize children. The responsibility, blame, contradiction. So takes responsibility. It's my fault. Blame me while blaming external forces. Absolves parents while claiming to be corrupted by this world. Apologizes while justifying actions as necessary. And the self-sacrifice selfishness is claims empathy and self-sacrifice as core traits while planning ultimate selfish act. Describes wanting to escape personal pain while inflicting pain on innocents, and frames mass murder as noble death on his feet rather than cowardly attacks. All right, so that's what I got, Joe. This is the last part here. Now, there's a lot there. Anything you'd like to add on to that?
Yes, and when you hear him say that, especially the part about I've been in pain for so long. Well, if you've been that depressed and in that much pain, and your mother actually signed off on your transition, and so none of this ever came up, you didn't do anything wrong by me. Well, really? I'm going to go out and murder children and kill myself, but don't worry, you didn't do anything wrong. Again, I read that clearly as a slap in their face in this whole thing. The whole idea of self-pity. He's either trying to develop self-pity or he's trying to develop sympathy for his position. And again, like you said, narcissistic. It's not me. I'm sacrificing. My sacrifice is bigger than everything here. These kids are going to die. I feel bad for them, but I'm going back at a society that's cruel and mean and this and that. And then at the end, I think the last thing that he throws out there to show this whole thing is, don't read my journals, but if you do, now you're about to go out and commit a horrific national act. You know what you're doing. You've just said this to your family. You've laid this all out. You've slapped them all over the place, laying this guilt on them. And then don't read my journals. Of course, there's a lot more in there. Who would say, well, no, we're not going to bother reading that. That is totally manipulative. And I guarantee in those journals, well, I take it back. I can't guarantee. I'm going to suggest, I strongly believe in those journals are 1,000 more punches in the face for everybody that this person had a problem with.
All right. So in agreement with you, Joe, I'm looking at it from your perspective where, he is obviously he is the monster, and I agree he's a monster. Don't get me wrong, but I love to be empathetic and try to play different roles. So I Googled or AI'd something. I said, hey, out of curiosity, AI, after reading the manifesto, why would you think he would target children? And it kind of touches on what you said, Joe. I think mine was a little bit more deep, but I still think it could exist. Maybe I could do another level too, where maybe he hates himself so much that he wants to prevent other people from being like him too. Or her. But again, that's just an avenue that could be way out there. But in alignment with what Joe said, it said the manifesto shows awareness that this would create a storm of chaos affecting so many more people. Targeting children guarantees maximum media coverage, public horror, and lasting societal impact. So we did touch on that. Children represent ultimate innocence. Attacking them ensures the act cannot be rationalized or forgotten. And previous reporting indicates the shooter wanted to watch children suffer, suggesting sadistic motivation beyond just seeking attention. So the funny thing is, that's his intent. He wants to see the children suffer. But why does he want to see the children suffer? That's what's not answered. That's what me and Joe just talking through a little bit. So it says the manifesto repeatedly mentions losing all hope and wanting to escape from this world. Children represent hope, innocence, and the future. Destroying them becomes a way to destroy what he felt he lost. Attacking during a religious service adds another layer, targeting faith, community, and spiritual hope simultaneously. The timing during first week of school specifically targets new beginnings and optimism. Westman was a former student at the school. His mother worked there for years. This wasn't random. It was attacking his own childhood innocence and happy memories. That's another approach. The manifesto shows hatred for what life is, targeting the place representing his own lost innocence. This manifesto expresses anger at injustices of America and this world. Again, this is about society now. Unable to directly attack abstract societal problems, children become proxies. Hurting children inflict maximum pain on families and communities he felt had failed him. And it's a way to make society suffer as he felt he was suffering. And then there's the psychological. The manifesto shows someone who could express love for family while planning to devastate them. This level of cognitive dissonance suggests severe psychological breakdown. May have seen children as abstract symbols rather than real people due to mental states. We broke into that before, but used more for, I actually think we said maybe same thing with children. They're a symbol, but we talked about race and stuff could be a symbol with no meaning behind it. And the false cancer narrative shows disconnection from reality. And the last part was vulnerability and control. Someone feeling completely powerless chooses the most defenseless targets. Children can't fight back, making them safe targets for someone who felt overwhelmed by life. Represents ultimate control over helpless victims when he felt he had no control over his own life. I think my part touches on that. Represents ultimate control over helpless victims when he felt he had no control over his own life. I think what I mentioned falls a little bit into that. It touches it. And the last one I got, Joe, is the manifesto shows someone who felt corrupted by this world. Children represent uncorrupted targets. Anything you want to add on that before we close?
Yeah, I do. I think, when I outline criminal investigation, I'm trying to figure out where do I want to go? What do I want to ask about? What do I need to look for? What am I missing? One of the things that investigators fall into improperly is they come up with a investigative hypothesis and they stick to that, and everything has to fit into that bundle. I always say it's good to have that over here. That's what I think probably happened. But then I got to look at all the other evidence, and I got to be willing to go in a totally different direction than what I think happened. When you talk about these children, the fact that he targeted them, Anthony, there is something there. There's something there. So our two choices are, at least as we've discussed, he was killing those children because he saw maybe that they were suffering like him, and he was trying to prevent them from having to suffer maybe a similar fate. And I was saying that I didn't hear any of that, and I would have expected to hear something that would have not made those children victims, but would have put them on some kind of a pedestal, would have deified them in some way, that they're good and they're innocent and they're going to suffer. I'm looking at it now and saying maybe, and this would be a line I would draw, and I would put a little box over here, and I would say maybe his attack on those children was his attack on those children who didn't have the same problems he had to suffer with. He's suffering with this inability to know who he is, to understand life, to be depressed. And those kids, they don't. So they can go. Now, I'm not saying that would be an entire hypothesis, but as you're opening my idea here to thinking, what else could it be? It's something to do with those children. He targeted children for a reason. Why do serial killers grab a young girl, terrorize her, assault her, kill her, and then assault her dead body continually? It's total control. So when you look at, why do they do that? Because they're driven to do it. There's no empathy for those people. That is a twisted mind. Well, knowing he's going to hurt these children, there's no empathy for those children. That's why I don't see him saying, I'm saving them. I see him targeting them. And they are a symbol, and they are a way to, inflict pain. You've taken out children. and look what I did. Because he does say in his manifesto, he's angry with all of them, how unfair the country is, how unfair everybody is. Here's how I'm paying all you back. I'm slapping everybody in my life with words, and I'm going to take out children. I think that would be something, that onion I would peel open more had he survived and we could sit down and talk to him.
Yeah, it's great because I like that, because the one thing we may never know, because even me, I could be judged on the fact that he's a transgender, so maybe I'm leaning towards what I assume could have been a concern with being judged, or maybe even if he didn't have the pressure externally, he could have put the pressure on himself or herself. You never know. I mean, sometimes people see the world how they want it to be seen, and it's not always good, but through their own bias and subjectivity. But guys, there's a lot here, and it was just trying to get into the mind. At the end of the day, I just want to put it out there. That is a monster. He killed 2 kids, injured 15 more. We're not forgiven anything that monster did. But I thought we could try to have a good dialogue to try to understand the monster before, one, we become one. That could always happen. So prevent it from happening. And 2, the more you understand, I think the more you can get ahead of it. I really do. I believe in that. I believe that that what Joe said before, right? Prevention, intervention, suppression. Most of us, we really want to spend time where there's hope. There's hope in prevention and intervention. But suppression is, and it's funny real quick. When everybody looks at failures, they look at law enforcement. Law enforcement really is the suppression side of things. Let people know that. So when it comes to prevention and intervention, sometimes the law enforcement look back at the community and say, "You're blaming us. What did you do?" Hey, Joe, anything you'd like to say in closing? Where can we find you? What do you got in the market? It was great. I thought it was an okay dialogue, Joe. You stayed with me for almost 3 hours on this.
Anthony, I love this stuff. This is my passion in life, to try and understand this dark side of humanity, to try and prevent things in the future. So if anybody's interested, my book is called The Interview, from blue360media.com. This is the one, The Investigation. This tells you all about investigating and understanding thoughts like this, drive crimes, what crimes. I have a podcast myself. If anybody would want to go listen to that, you go to youtube.com, and it's called The Blue Heart Webcast, right? So it's youtube.com/@Blue Heart Webcast. And it's all police-related things and investigative things and stories about law enforcement and all those kind of police-related stuff. The Blue Heart Webcast. I have more books coming out. I write lots and lots of articles. I'm thrilled to be here. Anthony has developed an amazing audience and an amazing group of people who want to learn, want to see things. I'm honored that I could be here. I'm sorry my office is such a mess. But that's how I conducted my office investigating, too. That's what I got written up every year in my evaluation. Good job, detective. Clean up your desk. Well, the one over there is all clean, but unfortunately, the computer's not working. So I appreciate your patience with me in my office. Anthony, thank you for having me, for trusting me to come out and speak to your audience. And I do appreciate everybody being out there and giving me a chance to give my opinion.
Now, guys, Joe, this is a very active audience. Usually a lot of comments will start coming in overnight. So hopefully, because they're going to want to talk to you, Joe. So if you get a chance, I'll post up the video as we speak. And then maybe you can go back and check the comments, because they do like to talk directly to the guest. And then maybe if there's other breaks in this news, me and Joe will keep track of it. And we'll have Joe come back on again and try to explore a lot. But I'll tell you something. I think we explored enough for stuff to come your way and for you guys to kind of just have more knowledge going forward. So always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. Let's hit this stuff. Let's share it. Let's get this channel growing. As always, guys, thank you for the support. Love you. I did this for you guys. Stay safe.